Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. As always, I'm Steve here at Ponics and Purity Medicinals. This week we have a really awesome show. A lot of you guys have seen KIS Organics on both the Facebook group. Backup audio there, sorry about that. So we have KIS Organics on this week. A lot of you guys know them and have followed their podcasts, and he puts out a ton of really great info, so we're super excited to have him on. And we'll get started. Today we have Tommy J with us as always.
Hey there, sir. I was just getting a call in from Marty. Yeah, glad to be here. Really looking forward to our guests we have this week, and nice to see everybody. I'm up here in Northern California to do some work and stuff, and so it's nice to stop in from different places in the country saying hi.
Awesome. We also have Roger from True Aquaponics is joining us here for a couple of minutes.
Oh, that's who Roger is. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the other Roger.
I know who Roger is now. Okay.
The other white Roger.
Aquaponics.
The other white Roger.
Is that in Texas, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I know who you are. Yeah, you've been on the show before with us, with me,
Yep.
or I've been on the show with you, however you want to look at it.
Then we have the other Roger Latewood.
How y'all doing? I'm from ilovegrowingmarijuana.com.
I don't think he's a real Roger.
I'm actually Fred Zeffel.
See what
I'm
I
the
mean?
grandfather to Arnold Zeffel, the pig on Green Acres.
Awesome. Sorry, Marty's having an issue trying to connect here. I'm trying to help Marty out. We got Mr. Green Jeans, as always.
The real Mr. Green Jeans.
Yeah, the real one, not the imposter with the YouTube channel.
Not the
Trying to
imposter.
ride on his genetics. And then we also have ECSD.
Hi, everyone. Hope all is well.
Glad to have you back. We got Josh from Dush Blooms.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Sorry my mic quality is a little bit low, but I'll get it better when I come on in a little bit later.
Cool.
Awesome.
And then we got Brain Grow over there.
Yep. We got Brain Grow as well.
Evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight.
What about Tad?
Yep. And we have Tad from KIS Organics. So he's our guest as
that's
always.
good. Sorry.
Yep.
That's
We introduce him. We always introduce the guests at the end so they can kind of take the floor. You do a lot of different cool work with different organic stuff. You have an awesome farm up there. I know you guys run, and you have a really cool podcast that's real inspiring. You want to tell everyone about it and what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah, we have like a 7-acre farm and feed store in Redmond, Washington, out by Seattle. And on the property, we have an outdoor preschool, goats and pigs and chickens, and we do an edible nursery and grow a bunch of vegetables for the community, and we're all organic. And then we also have KIS Organics, which is our online business where we do soils and nutrients and things like that for the cannabis industry. And I started a podcast last year called Cannabis Cultivation and Science, where I've started interviewing experts from around the industry, talking about various topics and around organics, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's
Awesome.
great.
So what's some of the
take on that? I mean, a lot of people are doing that. What made you go into that?
The podcast thing? Well, a lot of it was from
the actual business of putting. How'd you end up being an organic soil producer and all?
Yeah, well, it all started because my parents. I grew up on a nursery where I was around plants my whole life, and basically what happened was all these people. We had this compost tea business, and I kept getting these phone calls from guys that were growing 30 tomatoes in their basement. And I finally caught on and realized what was going on. So I Googled compost tea, and IC Mag actually popped up. So I joined there, started talking to guys about compost tea on there, and started chatting with people like, I don't know if you're familiar with Clackamas Coots or some of these other guys from back in the day on IC Mag. And basically what I decided I wanted to do was create a soil for someone. If you had cancer or were a medical patient and you walk into a hydro shop, you get hit with all these products, you don't know what you're supposed to use. And so the idea was if you just started with really good soil that had all the nutrients in it, you could walk in and walk out and be able to grow your own healthy organic medicine. And it's kind of just grown from there. We found all these other uses and ways of improving on it over the last, 5 or 10 years now. So that's where we started, and we're kind of growing from there.
Awesome. So you do a lot of work with compost teas and things like that on your website. What can you tell us about that? And kind of the different things you guys are doing, and maybe some of the different discoveries you guys have made with some of the different blends you guys have done.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing I would say is my father actually started this whole thing with Dr. Elaine Ingham back in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And he was one of the first soil food web advisors and was working on figuring out things like, for example, what level of dissolved oxygen levels do we need in order to make good tea, or what size mesh is the best size to allow all the microbes out but keep the compost in. And so he worked on that for a long time, and I came into the company in 2005 and started helping him out with it. And I guess the biggest takeaways I would say would be just people just need to start making it. It's harder to screw up than you think. Don't get caught up with trying to make so much a fungal tea or a bacterial tea. Bacteria will always be there. So if you can get that fungal level up, that's great. You can't have too much air, and really just, it's a shotgun approach. Put out all the microbes you can and let the plant choose what diversity and what microorganisms it wants around the roots.
Awesome. Have you done any work with ferments or kombuchas or lactobacillus or anything like that? Some of the KNF stuff at all or anything like that?
I haven't dove into that too far. I'm familiar with it and I've read about it. And Tim Wilson with Microbe Organics, he's a good friend of mine. He's done a lot with EM, but I personally haven't had a lot of experience with it. But I've always sort of looked at it sort of like a yin yang thing. Like there's room in the soil in these micropores for areas where there's room for anaerobic microorganisms like these lactobacillus bacteria. So having them, I think, is wonderful. I'm a big proponent of all types of microorganisms in the soil, and I think that the anaerobic is just as important as the aerobic in a lot of ways.
Awesome. So I saw you guys have biochar on your website. We often discuss that here. You want to talk a little bit about that? We haven't had anyone really give a good explanation on biochar yet, and that might be something that'd be real informative for people, because I know some of us like it, some of us don't, and maybe you can give us some science on that.
Yeah, so biochar dates back to the idea of terra preta, which was sort of these the natives around the Amazon were cooking with their clay pots, and then that material was charring and breaking down along the banks, and it ended up creating this really, really fertile soil they called terra preta. And what they've attempted to do with commercial or conventional biochar nowadays is recreate that process by using really, really high heat and really, really low oxygen conditions. And I was sort of on the fence with biochar. I can share a photo with you guys later, but essentially what we found is we're seeing about 7 to 10% better growth in yield using a high quality biochar. And for those of you that haven't gotten good results, I would suggest that maybe the biochar you're using wasn't necessarily of the highest quality. That's a possibility. There's a lot of products on the market right now because it is a new emerging industry, and not all of them are great, unfortunately. I've been fortunate enough to work with Black Owl Biochar, and they've done a lot of research with Cornell and a lot of other ag universities, and the quality of their biochar is really great. So we get their biochar in. We have to charge it because it doesn't have enough nutrients in it. It works like a sponge. So essentially, it holds the nutrients in place. And if you don't charge it, it can actually pull nitrogen from your plant. So if you were to take raw biochar and put it out there on your existing landscape or in your cannabis garden, you could actually see nitrogen deficiencies. So it's important to charge it with a little bit of nitrogen and then mix it in at a rate of around 5%, and you should see some results.
So what type of things make a high quality biochar?
Yeah, so it comes down to the feedstock, so what you're putting into the machine can affect it, and then also the quality of your biochar kiln. There's a really great design called the Kontiki kiln, it's spelled with a K, and we have one of those on our property. But for the large scale amount of biochar that we go through, we buy it in, and they have a proprietary machine. I haven't even seen it, but it's this huge machine that they use that allows them to get, like I said, this pyrolyzing action. So very, very high heat, very, very low oxygen. And that's what creates biochar. And that's what separates it from charcoal and ash that you would get, say, from, your charcoal briquettes, or even from, from your fireplace, for example.
Awesome. So what kind of feedstocks could you recommend for people to use for doing at-home biochar?
Good question.
Yeah, people, I typically recommend wood. So they're using a lot of stuff out of the timber industry with the biochar that we're getting. We make biochar out of our scrap wood and things like that. But what you want to avoid is putting in something like pressure treated wood, or anything with paint on it, anything that's going to burn and might leave a residue that you don't want in your actual gardening product. And then I know there's ones doing things with burning manures and other stuff. I haven't seen the results on those, so I can't speak to the quality of them, but I know that people are burning things other than wood with their, biochar kilns these days.
I think that's one of the prime alternatives to wood is the manure,
Yeah, and if you do buy biochar, they should be able to show you a good lab test. And that's something that we talk about on the podcast with Renell. There's a big difference when you start looking at the lab numbers across the board for these different biochars. And that's something that really separates them, because it's kind of like compost tea. It just looks like a bunch of brown water in a bucket unless you actually get it evaluated.
That's right.
So I've also I've heard you guys talk a lot about different types of soil amendments and soil chemistry, and I'd love for you to talk about that. I know you guys carry a really large range. I love all the different things that you guys carry to make your own amendments and teas and stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about how it is you came to the list that you have now, and maybe advice for people just getting started with soil mixes?
Yeah, I would say, so we do have quite a list of things. You don't need to get all of those things into your soils. They all have different purposes. Like feather meal, for example, is a great source of slow release nitrogen. So if you want nitrogen that's going to be available across the life of your crop, over a period of weeks to months, that's a good source. But if you want nitrogen that's going to be available more immediately, then something like fish meal might be a good choice, or blood meal, for example. So it really just depends. And that's just one example. So when you build your soil, you want to think about these micro and macronutrients that you want in your soil. And then, as a general rule, if you're not doing soil testing, so you don't know exactly what you're getting, it's a good idea to aim for anywhere from a quarter cup up to a cup per cubic foot of any amendment is a good general rule as a place to start, so you don't get too carried away. But less is always more. You can always add more into your soil. It's a lot harder to take things away.
That's a good point. People don't get that all the time.
Yeah, and there's a good recipe out there from Coot that's a free one. It's neem, crab, kelp, basalt, and another rock dust, and some calcium, and I think that's about it. And it's a good starting place for people who want to try that out. If you're going to do some soil testing, which isn't expensive, $25, $30 a test, you can really start dialing that in and get some of those micronutrients that are really important for the plant as well, and get those to optimal levels.
Awesome. So what are kind of some stuff that people maybe do wrong that you see semi-regularly with soil mixes?
Good question. One of the things I see is a lot of people will go, they won't soil test. I think that's for the cost of a soil test, I think it's well worth it. $25, $30. It gives you a ton of information, and then you can see what's really going on. The biggest mistake I see is people don't use high quality compost, because you got to remember that kelp meal, that alfalfa meal, that fish meal, those aren't, for all intents and purposes, they're not really in a plant available form. Those need to be broken down by the microorganisms in your soil. And where you're getting those microorganisms is really from your compost or earthworm casting fraction of your total soil. And that's why it's so important that has good diversity. Oh, and I see someone mentioning the soil savvy test on there on the live chat. That's one that I recently just did a podcast with the agronomist on. That test is good because with cannabis you can't do a tissue test really. So that one's a good test if you want to know what's going on with your plant right now. So the way I like to use that particular test is if you have a bumper crop, for example, you're growing, let's say, Girl Scout cookies, and you have your best crop ever, you can do a soil savvy test 4 weeks into flower. And what that'll do is that'll show you all your optimal levels for that crop in your environment. So the next time you grow that crop, you can test again if for some reason things are a little off, and you can say, oh, well, this time around my manganese levels are lower, my calcium is too high, or whatever, and you can make adjustments mid-cycle. Now, if you want to test for reusing the soil or for making soil, I much prefer the Malic 3 test, which is what Logan Labs, and there's a few other places like Spectrum Analytic and others that offer that Malic 3 test. But that test will tell you everything in the soil, not what's plant available. So Soil Savvy tells you what's plant available right now and what the plant's taking up, kind of like a saturated paste test, whereas the Malic 3 test, like the one from Logan Labs, tells you everything that's in the soil, not what's currently available to the plant.
Hey Tad, am half listening here while I feed my son. But did you say that leaf tissue culture or sampling was not available for cannabis? You said something about that.
Yeah, because most labs won't do leaf tissue analysis on cannabis. In addition, you can't mail
just because it's a drug.
Yeah,
allegedly, unless you know a student over there that's willing to work in the lab after hours.
Well,
Sure.
you can't mail it across borders either. That's against federal law at this current point. That's that's part of the testing problem across the board in America. There's only so many places you can actually live and get it tested. But I did like what you're saying about the soil test. Now, in my area, if somebody wants to do a soil test, you get a soil test here for $7. You can send off all the soil tests you want for around $7 here. So that depends on where you live. And I imagine if you live in a cannabis savvy state, it costs a lot more to get.
Well, what kind of tests are they doing though for $7? Is that full ppm test?
It's dirt.
They're giving you a breakdown of everything that's in the soil.
See, we have a local company that does our test. So our county gives every homeowner, I think, 3 free tests on a lifetime on their given property. But that test only tells us NPK, calcium, sulfur, and pH. So for cannabis or a high value crop, having those extra micronutrients, I think, is really, really nice. But for $7, if it gives you information that's useful, I say go for it. One thing I will say is most home tests where you actually do the test and get the result yourself that you can buy in the store, those are wildly inaccurate, and I really don't like to use those. You want to send it off to a lab. And that Soil Savvy one, again, is one where you're taking a sample and you're sending it off, and then they're going to look at the results and email you the results. And then whatever lab you go with, you want to stay with, because you can't take your lab locally and compare it to the test you got from Logan Labs. Even if they're running the exact same test, you'll just find that the results will vary too much. So whatever lab you go with, stay with that lab. It just makes it a lot easier. I like Logan because that's who I started with, and that's why I recommend them, because when people send me tests, it makes it a lot easier for me to evaluate them if they're from a testing facility I was familiar with. But hey, if you have a good one locally, that's great. I'd stay with it.
Yeah, well, we got great agriculture down here in the Southeast, and we got the universities. It's basically you're sending to the labs that the universities use for testing. So like Clemson University or North Carolina A&T, they all use the same kind of labs. So but you're right, I agree. I like that too. It's a great idea. So you get a benchmark from the local or whoever you do your testing with. If you're having healthy crops, like you do, like we're talking about, then that is a really great advice to stay with that tester so that you have a benchmark that, whatever you're getting results from them, you're getting they're doing the same exact testing. So you don't get skewed. Yeah, that's a good point too.
So we often recommend people to go to local ag departments at their university. Is that something you'd also agree with, or do you, tend to stray from that?
Yeah, if we're talking about soil testing, I think that's a great option. Just keep in mind, like I said, that you'll have to stay with that lab for all your results. Don't try and compare one local university test to another. You'll find that the pH will vary, the nutrient levels will vary, even on the exact same samples to these different labs. So once you kind of get calibrated to whatever lab you're using, you just want to stay with it. That's my whole point. And then that soil savvy test is just different in the sense that it's not telling us everything that's in the soil. It's just telling you what the plant can currently take up over a period of about 5 days. So it's more like what's in the plant tissue. So it works like a synthetic root. It's like a little resin. That's the big difference there.
It's just a little summary of what's going on when you really like the way the plant's reacting. Isn't that what you're saying? When the plant looks really great and it's growing crazy, you say you throw one of those tests on there, and that gives you a benchmark again,
Yeah, that's how I like to use it. I mean, there's people that use it for other things. You can use it for turf and stuff like that. But exactly, I like to use it as a way of establishing a benchmark.
So earlier you talked a little bit about microbial inoculants. Is there certain microbial inoculants you like over others, or what are you rocking these days?
I'm ultimately my number one choice is a well-made compost tea that you make yourself at home, because that's going to give you the greatest diversity of microorganisms. And one thing that it has as an advantage over all of these other microbial inoculants is that it is going to have nutrient cycling going on in the bucket. So all these bacteria and archaea are being predated on by the larger microorganisms, protozoa, flagellates, things like that. And so they're already cycling nutrients for you. So there really isn't a better thing you can add to your soil. That being said, there are some microbial inoculants that I think on the market are better than others. Mammoth P would be one that I'm familiar with because I've actually thrown it under the microscope. You can go on my YouTube channel and see the results for yourself, because I wanted to see, can you brew it? Can I extend it? That stuff's expensive. One thing I found though was it's actually alive. There's actually living microorganisms there, which is not something I can say for all the products, because when you go buy a microbial product, you don't know how long it's been sitting on the shelf. You don't know if it was sitting out in the sun, or if it's a year old, or even if there were microbes in there in the beginning. There's just not good regulations. In fact, the Oregon Department of Ag, I think it was in 2016, put out a report of sort of what labels claim and then what's actually on the label from a microbial perspective. And if you go check it out, it's pretty sad. You're really not getting your money's worth in a lot of cases. So that's something to keep in mind. There is a new product coming out on the market similar to Mammoth P from a guy I know that's a researcher up in Canada, where he's found specific calcium solubilizing and phosphorus solubilizing bacteria similar to Mammoth P, the same kind of thing. And that's something that's going to be coming on the market here soon, and I'm excited to see what the trials start looking like with that. So there are good ones out there, but you really got to do your research. And any of those instant compost teas, just be careful.
Yeah, Mammoth. We like Mammoth P, I believe. I can't speak for everybody, but I believe overall the panel, everybody here pretty much likes Mammoth P if you're inclined to use it.
Yeah, I like Mammoth P a lot. I actually know Colin over there, and I did a bunch of testing for them back in the day when I still lived in Colorado, and actually helped them figure out what the lethal level is for fish and stuff. You can put some psychotic levels of that stuff in with fish, and they don't care. It doesn't seem to have any kind of negative impact, though. Super, super safe. It ain't going to kill your fish to have those gills and everything else. You don't really have to worry about over harming other stuff. But what we found when we put it in the aquaponic systems is it really helps unlock a lot of the insoluble phosphorus that the fish produce. The fish produce a ton of phosphorus, but only a small percentage of it is available. And simply by adding just Mammoth P, we can actually get it not 100%, but pretty damn close to what the plants want. just by doing that, which was really incredible. And I've used it a lot with vegetables. I used to work for Aquaponic Source, and here Marty's got a little bottle there.
Yeah, that reminds me. So these guys aren't on the market yet, but this is coming out soon. But I can send one of you. I can send you a sample, Steve. This is the company out of Canada. They're called Onada Growth, and you'll have to play around with it in Aquaponics and let me know. This is one I brought home so I could throw it under the microscope myself. So, yeah, that's very cool. And Colin's great. You know, I met him a few years back, and I walked up to their booth and I just started grilling him. You know, asking him all these questions, and he was, in my opinion, very honest and super knowledgeable. And unlike a lot of the vendors at that show, he took the time to really answer all my questions intelligently, and that really set him apart, in my opinion.
Well, we had him on the show. Well, Steve had him on the show. I keep saying we, but it seems like we all after all this time. But Steve had him on the show one night, and you're exactly right. And I grilled him because I run a forum and I teach on a forum, a massive forum, and I teach a lot of older folks that have trying to get away from meds so they can enjoy their senior life, and it's great. It's more rewarding than teaching all the stoners in the world, teaching just a few people that are 60 years old that never grew before. But Colin came on, so I grill him like towards the newbie way, like to explain. You know, like they start sometimes on the show. There's so much knowledge, things start going over average growers' heads, and in this case, Colin allowed me to inject questions into him, like you said, and he answered every one of them and made everybody understand the microbial benefit of Mammoth P and all. And yeah, I thought it was great. Yeah, I'm glad you
definitely one of the better guests that we've had. Definitely. Spectrum King, and Jeff Lodefeld has also been one of the incredible guests we've had. Oh, here, hold on.
Speak up. We're losing you, Steve.
Hope you don't mind if I butt in here. We were talking about the Mammoth P there. I got some really great results with the recharge, and I noticed somebody was typing in the chat also about the recharge. Have you had experience with Scotty's recharge?
There you go.
You know, I do know Scotty. I've met him in person. We've chatted a lot on the phone. I have not had a chance to try his product in like a side-by-side trial. I've threw it under the microscope, and it looked the problem in comparing Mammoth P and Recharge is that Recharge is the powder, and so these microorganisms are pretty much dormant at the time until they get added to water and can come alive. So under the microscope, it's not going to look as exciting. But you know, I really can't comment it other than
I would brew it. You know, I would take the Recharge and brew it in my teas or whatever, and then add it. So, did you brew it for a while, then throw it under the microscope?
I did. So I took it and added. I took it and put it in distilled water, and then I tested it by itself, and then I also tested it with a little bit of unsulfured molasses to see if that increased some of the microbial levels after about 24 hours. And you know, like I said, it's a little different situation because you're dealing with more dormant microorganisms. So I didn't see a huge change over that time. I wonder in a real life application, if you were to brew that a little bit longer and then add a food source and then brew it for another 24 hours, if that would have gotten different results. And you got to remember, I only tried this once. So I'm definitely not saying there's anything wrong with Recharge. I just don't have enough experience with it to really give a lot of advice or feedback.
I think the point is you made it once you add water, it actually does its job. So that's important. You believe that much anyway. The microbes come alive once water's added.
Yeah, that's something for all of those types of instant, microbial products that are powdered. Yeah.
That's why you're always better off buying liquid microbes, because liquid microbes generally, not always, but generally are more alive or in a state where they're quicker able to spring back to life. Whereas with the powdered ones, correct me if I'm wrong, but generally they're shipping cysts and eggs and other dormant phases of the microbes, and that it takes them a while to wake up and then reproduce. And that's reason why you have, a lot, especially with the powders, it tells you to brew for 36 to 48 hours, is they need a time to wake up and start breeding again. correct me if I'm wrong, Ted.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And if you're, like I said, aerated compost tea is going to be the best. But if you're lazy or you don't have time, these are other options down the road that you can do. If you just want to throw some powder in a bucket and let it aerate, then that's it's better than nothing. I guess it's a good way. And it seems like he has a great following around his product, so it seems like people are really liking it and getting good results. But
sure, I really do think, though, going back to the broader topic, I do think that like things like Mammoth P and some of these other specific microbe chains that are handling specific nutrients and giving you the full chain. Like, for instance, with nitrogen, you have nitrosoma, or nitrospira converts ammonia to nitrite, and your nitrosoma that converts nitrite to nitrate. You have these different microbe chains, and I think that bottling and stabilizing a lot of these, especially for some of the weirder nutrients. I know that there's a product out there. I can't tell the company because I'm under an NDA, but I've actually tested a product for molybdenum. I've tested a product for silica that were microbe chains as well. So it's pretty cool to see, and I really do think that's kind of the future, and that's one of the reasons why we liked our aquaponics so much, is because we can run our terrestrial food webs in that soil layer. We use a method called dual root zone, and we have a soil layer and an aquatic layer. And in the soil layer, we can run all your traditional terrestrial microbes that you guys are all used to dealing with, all the incredible work that you do with KIS Organics and Dragonfly Earth Medicine and all these other incredible people that are pushing the boundaries. You can take all that knowledge, put it into your soil layer, and then you can take your aquatic stuff from the planted aquarium industry and now some of the aquaponics industry and the aquaculture industry is now working on these specific microbe chains to help for that. So you can actually get double the number of things. Or I'm in the process of trying to help map out, okay, cool, so which nutrient is best for the aquatic versus the terrestrial and all that. But it's really neat to see how this all comes together, and how all these different things, we're all on the same page and we're all basically on the same target from both ends, just attacking it from different things. And it's really neat to see. And I really do think that's kind of the future of where we're going, or where this industry is. It's not about new nutrients and new forms of synthetic nutrients. It's about how to take the little bit that's there and unlock it. We have, look at the Great Lakes and all the phosphorus we've dumped in there. It's causing these algae blooms that are killing all the fish. Well, what if we, instead of dumping all this additional phosphorus in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Canada and Michigan right border that, what if they just use Mammoth P to unlock the last 70 years worth of phosphorus?
Whoa! Well, that might turn into like a horror movie, like 100 years down the road. You never know about that. Yes, there's some Mammoth P in the lakes, right? I don't know.
Since World War II, we've been stuck on these chemical fertilizers, and we got to get off of this. It's not sustainable for our what we're doing. And additionally, think of it this way. So we talked a little bit about KNF, Korean natural farming, with the lactobacillus. Kentucky State University just did a study. In fact, we even had Joe on the show. It increased fish growth rate by 15%. So not only were the plants growing better, but the fish grew better. Why? Because the entire food web was improved. And that's what you have to do, regardless if you're doing soil or aquaponics. You have a healthy food web, everything will grow better, not just the plants. And that's what's so cool about it, and what's so cool about what you do.
Yeah, we're starting to dial in what more optimal levels are for these various cultivars and for cannabis in general. And one thing I can tell you is that people in general massively over apply phosphorus. And like you mentioned, we're creating these algal blooms from excess phosphates and excess nitrates. The cannabis industry does a lot of damage to the environment, and it's really our opportunity. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is that's one of the reasons I want us to reuse our soil. I want us to test our soil so that we're not contributing to those sorts of things. So that's
getting into the ferments and the microbiology and stuff like that. We're finding that we don't have to use all of the fertilizer and the high strength ppm, high TDS, high EC nutrients to get the same results or better, more healthy results. I think that's the important thing that I've been learning from all these guys here, Brain Grow and Steve, and all through all this is, and what you're doing. Even I think we can all agree that we're opening up ways that you're not using as much fertilizer or anything like fertilizer, right? I mean, can I get a hell yeah or whatever?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of
everything. Yeah.
And that unlock nutrients, just like we talk about sometimes, you know what I'm talking about with the
molecules.
unlocking,
Tommy's all about the
making
molecules.
those THC molecules bioavailable to the body. You guys are doing the same kind of research and work with making the nutrients bioavailable to the plants, and therefore less is more. You don't just have to dump everything and have it running into the rivers.
Right. That's what I was getting at. Thank you, Tommy. That's what we do here.
So I had another point I was going to bring up, and I don't remember where it was. I'll think of it in a second. So anyone
I
have any
can't hear you
questions
guys
for-
very good. I've had to turn you
I
up.
don't have any other questions for Tad. I know you guys have been kind of quiet today. Marty or Mr. Green Jeans or anybody? What's up, Marty? It's Marty. Wants you to say hi since you joined, since we had a little issues there in the beginning.
I can barely hear Steve, but I think he's trying to say hi.
Yeah, I've
Sorry
been
about
trying
that.
to get that across.
I got-
Hey, Marty,
I got yelled
nice
at
of you to
for
drop
that.
by, buddy.
What's up, man? Had to get room on the panel. We're getting too popular.
Does anyone have any additional questions for Tad? I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to ask him questions from the panel.
I did miss some of that stuff. I got a little disconnected right when he started talking about the really interesting stuff about charging the charcoal. And because I don't know if you guys remember, but I was talking about pretty much exactly the same thing a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
With my, I have the backyard biofilter. I just took a big old tub and I made it into a biofilter and ran it for a while. And I was throwing, compostable stuff in there, and instead of, I'm a lifelong composter. I was composting on the fire escapes in New York City in the 70s. I was born. My first outdoor memory is learning to turn the soil from my grandmother. I didn't grow up in a nursery, but my grandmother was an organic gardener, and so I grew up on that stuff. And so I'm sitting there, trying to. I told you guys about the story about the biofilter and throwing the charcoal in there, and it was just a wild idea. I was like, wow, what if I toss the, and it's not, it's wood charcoal. It's nice hardwood burned charcoal, and I toss it in there, and after about a week, it sinks down, right? It's absorbed all the night, it's not ammonia anymore. It's all nice nitrates and nitrites.
Absorbs everything.
Yeah. And so it absorbs into the charcoal, and like Tad was saying, it's funny that they call activated charcoal because it's really kind of deactivated, because it's sort of more in battery mode at that point, right? But take it and you soak it in it. I'm pretty sure it absorbs mostly. I think it's absorbing water too, but it's probably absorbing a lot of the organic molecules, because that's what charcoal does, right? and so you smash that up. One thing I noticed, that the straight charcoal is pretty good. The regular straight charcoal is pretty good, but you have to really be careful to water very heavily to make sure, because the charcoal is a real sponge and it comes in a really dry condition. If you just buy the hardwood charcoal, which is what I was using, as a source of the charcoal.
If you can get really clean hardwood charcoal, as in it doesn't have any additives or anything for barbecuing, then that's definitely something you could experiment with. You totally reminded me.
That's what I was using. I'm doing it quite a bit of it so far. It seems really great. It obviously supplies, I guess, potassium, right?
Yeah, you're breaking up. I don't know if it's my end or yours, but
wood together really tightly and then covering it over with wet clay to make it into a sealable oven, where you can get it lit. You leave a couple of holes, you get it all lit, right? And then you seal it up completely, and that's, cut off the oxygen supply once it's burning nice and good. And wouldn't that give you, solid charcoal in that? And I know they still do that in many places in the world, but usually they're just using it to save the charcoal for further use of more fuel. instead of using it, putting it back in the ground, as in the Brazilian, they're the terra presidents.
Mr. Green Jeans.
You're going away,
breaking up
Mr.
quite a
Green
bit there, buddy.
Jeans.
Yeah, Mr. Green Jeans, you're breaking up real bad.
If I could speak to what he was talking about, though,
Cool.
the other one thing he didn't mention, but it was kind of alluding to, is that you are also getting carbon sequestration, which is really important too. So you're sequestering carbon, which is good for the environment. And the quick test,
because you're storing carbon as well, right?
Sorry about
You're
that.
breaking up hardcore, Mr. Green Jeans.
I tried to mute him, it's not working.
Apparently, the terror.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh.
I don't have a way to fix that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the quick test to test biochar is drop it in water, and if it floats, it's not as good as if it sinks, because the biochar, high quality biochar, will actually absorb water, so it will sink, which is sort of counterintuitive. But that's one of the tricks that Renell over at Black Owl Biochar told me about.
Cool.
I like that. That's a great way to look at. I mean, that's a great little test, though. It's kind of like whether a seed is viable or not. Put it in water, see if it floats.
Yeah.
I like that. So with biochar, you want it to sink. I'm sorry, Steve. All right, move. I yield.
We had a question from chat from Corey. He says, "Tad, are you still culturing Mammoth P from? Are you still doing that, or was that just a one-time experiment, or?"
I just did that as a one-time experiment. You can go on my YouTube and check out the video and draw your own conclusions. I think Mammoth P has 5 different bacteria in there that they're putting in, and I think you can identify at least 3 or 4 after the addition of. I tested it with alfalfa, our microbe catalyst, and with unsulfured molasses. And with the molasses, I noticed we lost some species, like certain other ones were more successful than others. With the microbe catalyst, we seem to have the best diversity, but not quite as much growth as we got with the molasses. But I do think there is a chance, like let's say we started with 5 species of bacteria with Mammoth P, we may be down to 4. If we brew it, we may lose one, and that's something that they've claimed through their marketing and such. But for people that are on a budget, it might be a way to help extend it and get a lot of these bacteria into your soil a little more affordably too.
Cool.
Basically, they have figured out the food source combination to keep all 5 bacteria alive.
Pretty much, and the proprietary way to propagate and separate them.
Yeah, so I don't think they're too excited about people brewing it. So I try not to get too involved in it, and I don't even want to claim that you
Trying
can.
to figure it out.
I just will say, here's the results. You can look at the microscope video and draw your own conclusions. So
I like that. Just here it is. I like that. Yeah.
You often hear people do like grass clipping teas and stuff like that for protists and rotifers and things like that. Is that something that you recommend? Is that something you could talk about a little bit?
I haven't had any luck with those. I tried alfalfa to make protozoa teas, and then when I actually looked at it under the microscope, there really wasn't a lot going on. If I want to increase my protozoa, I'll just take earthworm castings or compost and add some alfalfa meal to it, or even better, what Jeff Lowenfels called baby oatmeal. So oatmeal for babies, or ground oat flour. And that will increase your bacterial feeding nematodes and increase your flagellates like dramatically.
Awesome. No, that's good to know, and that's great info.
And a nice plug for Jeff in his book. So teaming with microbes, teaming with nutrients, and teaming with
fungi.
There we go. Here we go. Thank you very much.
Jeff's a good friend. In fact, lab tests in his first book are from our company. So I've known Jeff for quite a few years now. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is. We had a great show.
Awesome.
It was awesome. What an honor. What an honor. Jeez.
Does anyone have any other additional questions for Tad? I don't want to take up his whole night. I know
Yes,
he's only going to give us about an hour.
I still had one.
Yeah,
I,
there you
I
go.
really, I'm sorry I took so long in getting to it before. If
Go
it,
ahead, buddy.
I was gonna ask, what do you think it would be the best thing to run in my backyard biofilter underwater composting? You know, the things I've tried are things like steer manure and chicken manure and regular, compost stuff that I've green things that my kitchen waste and things like that. But I've never tried something like alfalfa meal or any of those other things. What do you think would be, if you were doing something like that, some experiment like that? What do you think would be good ingredients to make a sort of a concentrated compost tea like that to infuse your charcoal with, basically?
So the big thing with the charcoal or biochar is it needs a little bit of nitrogen before you add it. That's the key ingredient, and you could literally pee on it. That's the simplest way. But yeah, so that's what you need to worry about. But in terms of what I missed a little bit of your question because you're cutting out a little bit, but I think what you were asking was about things for your compost pile.
Basically, things to charge your biochar with.
For the
Things to include. Yeah.
Mr. Green Jeans, I think I got the gist of your question. Let me try re-asking it, and if I'm wrong, you can correct me. He's trying to ask if you were making a compost tea or a brew specifically to charge your biochar, what would be your list of ingredients or your choice things or stuff you would say is kind of a must?
To add to that, what's a proper way to do it?
Great. Okay, I totally understand now. So that's a really good question. So for me, when I make compost tea, I'm going for microbial biomass and microbial diversity, just those two things. So we just want the full set of microorganisms and as much diversity as we can get. And so for that, I really like to just use a high quality earthworm casting or compost. And either we make a product called Microbe Catalyst that's sort of a diversified food source, or Tim Wilson, I have right on my website. He has ratios that he's given out for unsulfured blackstrap molasses and alfalfa. And that's really it. So I don't like to use a whole bunch of ingredients when making compost tea. Now, if I want to make a nutrient tea, then I might consider a lot of these other ingredients that you're talking about, because they all have various nutrient levels and other benefits for the plant. Like alfalfa meal, you're also picking up a growth hormone called triacontanol that has a lot of benefits. So they're all wonderful. But if I'm just looking to charge my biochar, then I'm just looking to use something with a little bit of nitrogen in it. And that can even just be your compost tea. So in a perfect world, you might want to either run a low nitrogen something through there, or just and then filter it with the compost tea, or just run the compost tea right through it. And that doesn't mean letting it sit in compost tea, but just let the compost tea run through the material once, and then that should do it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's so can you talk a little bit more tricantanol? Some people seem to be very controversial about it or get all upset about it, and I'd love to have someone that actually has any amount of knowledge on it explain it to our viewers, because I'll be honest with you, even I'm a little bit confused.
Oh boy, I don't know if I'm that guy. Well, I can tell you that it's a plant growth hormone. It's naturally occurring. Rose growers use alfalfa for that very reason. That's why they love it. The levels are quite low naturally. Now, when you start talking about synthetically deriving it, then I think you can get into trouble, and that's where my knowledge drops off, because I'm pretty much just focused on organics. So if triacontanol aside, I can tell you that alfalfa meal is one of my favorite microbial foods, because you get good fungal growth and good bacterial growth out of it. So anytime I have a compost pile, I like to throw a handful or two of organic alfalfa meal in there. It gets all the microorganisms active and kind of preps it before I make a compost tea.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, because you're only looking at the organic way about it, and that is a natural occurring.
Yep. No, I'm glad you could at least speak on it a little bit, because
I'm sorry. Yeah,
I've seen some pretty heated discussions about tricantanol, and I honestly don't know enough about it to make an educated decision, so it's nice to at least hear a little bit of info on it.
But if you're not synthetically producing it and you're throwing alfalfa meal to produce it to allow that to occur naturally, I think that's the way it's intended to be. You know,
Just
I mean,
another
but I
soil
can, I
additive,
mean,
you know,
what
organic.
go ahead, Brain Grow. I yield. Go ahead, buddy.
No, I was just saying, I mean, I feel like it's just another awesome thing to add to your soil, you know, and you can get it organic is even better. So why not use it?
Do EC or Roger have any questions? You guys haven't really spoken up yet.
No, just listening. Great info.
So I had something.
Sure.
What are your guys' favorite soil amendments? I know what mine are. Like, what are your must-haves if you're making the
Well,
soil?
that was going to be my question to you, Tad. Is like, what's your recipe, bro? Come on, that's what we want to hear.
All right. Well, I list all the ingredients that I put in my soils for our work right on the website, including I think even the brand names that I'm sourcing. So we're pretty transparent in that regard. I can't give you the whole recipe because I go out of business and I got employees and mouths to feed. But if I had to pick my favorite soil amendments, kelp meal is going to be number one. You're getting over 70 different trace elements. You're getting You're getting a little bit of potassium, a little bit of nitrogen, no excess sodium, plant growth hormones and regulators, and you're also getting a wonderful microbial food. So it's one of the best things out there. I love kelp meal, and there's some great books out on seaweed and agriculture that you can read if you really want to dive deeper into it. But that would be my number one, and I think alfalfa meal might be even number two. So.
I'm right behind you, bro. Like those two are my big favorites. I'm ashamed to admit I do love my guanos. My guano.
All right.
I did the alfalfa for me, and the kelp are really what brings it home.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the guano thing because I know there's some environmental issues with it.
Yeah,
but
once you do, it's hard not to because it works so well. But it does have environmental concerns for sure.
You have to be
So,
careful.
so
too
hey,
with
you guys,
guanos.
what is your source for getting this kelp meal that you like so much? This organic kelp meal. Where you do have a particular source, or is that something you don't want to share, or what's up with that?
No, in fact, you should be able to get it at your local feed store or garden center, and
just get local. Okay,
it's probably about $100 for a 50-pound bag. Is usually the going rate right now. But what you want is Ascophyllum nodosum, which is the North Atlantic sea kelp. And most of it is coming from a company up north called Acadian Sea Plants, but there's a few other producers. Nice. But it's the most widely researched type of seaweed out there, and it's great stuff.
That's what I was looking for everybody. Thank you very much. Yeah. See, I got ag supply down here. I might be able to get some things a little bit better price than that, So, but we're lucky, and that's something for you folks out there too. A lot of times you don't think about this, but every state and every region has agricultural supply companies. And if you think outside the box, outside the hydro store and the strip mall, and go to the ag supply place and somehow manage to be able to do business with them. And it's not that hard, but, basically, I had a farm. That's how I started a hydroponic farm. And then I got registered with the USDA, and then I was able to do business with them. But I think they still would, there's so many farmers out there, and there are a lot of farmers around don't necessarily have all kinds of licensing and all, depending on what state you're in. Look for ag suppliers for some of the stuff we talk about, and organic. They've got the organic, but check it out too, because we've now lately found out that a lot of stuff labeled organic and being sold as safe and organic in all kind of ways and shape, forms, from pesticides to microbial usages. We've been lied to for a few years, and sorry, I went off on a tangent, and I now give it back to you guys.
I wanted to
just wanted to bring up the agricultural supply companies that people don't think about.
I wanted to circle back and touch on guano real quick. Actually, with guanos, you have to be careful because seabird guano, for instance, is really high in sodium. You have to be careful about that, even if it's fossilized seabird guano, because remember, seabirds have two
That
ways to
explains
excrete
it, dude.
sodium. They drink salt water, and they have two ways to excrete it. They can excrete it via their nasal cavity, or they can excrete it via their anus. That's it. That's the only two ways they can kick it out. They don't have the kidneys produce it, but birds have a cloaca. They don't have a pee hole and a poop hole. They have just one hole. So all of their sodium comes out in their waste, or either from their nose or their butt. So when the fossilized seabird guano can be extremely high in sodium, and I've seen people actually sodium burn their plants with trying to make really hot mixes, especially with compost teas, where they're making tea and putting it in the tea every week. I've seen a couple of soil growers actually straight up sodium burn their plants.
Well, no,
Steve's
it's
coming
cool,
through
man.
with the important animal knowledge.
I was gonna say, dude, no, I actually emailed Tad about this. It's I'm my failures are yours to learn from. But yeah, my first run on my in quotes no-till or living soil bed this summer, in my first soil test. So it's like all of the above, but it came back with high levels of sodium, and I was like, what the fuck? I'm not adding anything, any salt-based nutrients or anything, but I do add a lot of seabird guano and crab shell and oyster shell, kind of on the rotation. And the bed is very new. I mean, it's I started in July, right? So it was one cycle, and then it was a test, and you nail it on the head, Steve. So.
Well, the other thing that worries me too with these guanos is that the various bacteria and microorganisms are potentially pathogens, especially with bad guanos. So if we're brewing them up in compost teas, we're exposing ourselves and our edible plants to potential risk there. And I talked to the ODA about this, the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and they don't do any pathogen testing. Now, I don't know if the FDA or on a national level, there's any testing before they bring these guanos into the country. But I know at the state level, all they're required to do is show the nutrient levels. So NPK, calcium, and that's really about it. So there is a risk there on the microbial side. Plus, I know the harvesting of these bat guanos can not only be dangerous from a respiratory level for the people in the native areas that are doing it, but also for the bats themselves. If there's pups that are in the cave, they may be abandoned because of the way they're harvesting. Now, this has gotten a lot better. I know there's a lot more sustainable guanos options out there, but as a consumer, there's no way for you to tell looking at a package how this guano was harvested. So there are some challenges around that. And then speaking to the sodium, I just want to say before I forget, if your bed is showing really, really high sodium, the best thing you can do is just flush a bunch of water through it, and then retest and essentially just kind of reset the bed, because the sodium will drain out. So it's not the end of the world that you have high sodium.
That's interesting. I once had somebody tell me that there could be no sodium in the water at all, or the plants would just die.
You need a minimum level of sodium in order for osmosis and
well, I knew that, but
people use Epsom there, for to
Well,
supply magnesium.
Yeah, but Epsom salt doesn't have any sodium. Epsom salt's
Magnesium sulfate. Yeah.
Yep.
Magnesium sulfate. Yeah.
Right.
Salt doesn't always imply sodium.
Right. It's not sea salt. Yeah.
So and on that note, I read an interesting article about tomato farmers in Italy, and they would actually flood their tomato farms at a certain point, a certain stage of growth every season. And what that would do is it would stress the plants out, and it would force the plants to put more energy into their fruit. So they would end up with better tasting tomatoes at the end of the season. Now, I'm sure everyone's screwed up a grow, and their plants have been super stressed, and they end up with the best tasting, highest quality buds they've ever gotten. So there is something associated with plant stress. But if we're talking about a no-till situation, that gets really challenging because we want to reuse the soil. We want to maintain optimal levels for plant growth. But there's a good and bad to plant stress, I would just say.
So I have two kind of So last questions for you. One, so you're probably one of the few people that I can actually ask this question. Have you done any experimentation with isolated plant proteins or enzymes? I know you do a lot of microbial work. I'm sure you've stumbled across at least a few of these by accident, without necessarily naming them and screwing up our NDAs. But you know what I'm talking about. And is there anything? Have you done any work around anything like that? Even without talking about it directly, but maybe is that anything you kind of researched or?
I haven't done a lot around that, but if you're familiar with Clackamas Coot, he came out with this whole concept of taking something like barley that has very high enzymatic levels. So malted barley, they're arresting it at the barley at its highest enzymatic levels, and then that's something you can grind up and apply directly to your plants. And so I did some experiments based on his stuff, and I know Mountain Organics has these tinctures, and they're essentially made by taking the barley, grinding it up, and soaking it in glycerin with whatever other plant extracts you want to put in there, and letting it sit for a month. And that's a way of extracting these enzymes and preserving them, according to Clackamas Coot. And I haven't dove far enough into it myself, but I do know a lot of people are using sprouted seed teas, or SST, as you'll see. And he's since moved away from sprouting the teas or sprouting the seeds themselves, but rather just will use malted barley or something that's already malted, because these guys have the malting process for making beer down to a science that is so exact that you can get consistent results, and you don't have to sprout the seeds, because you have a very small window after you sprout the seeds. Like when I did that, I actually screwed it up, and they produce alcohols if you let them sit after sprouting and you grind them, if you don't apply it right away. And I think that's what happened with me, because I didn't get very good results. So I've since switched away from sprouting the teas themselves. So it relates to enzymes, but doesn't exactly answer your question, I guess.
Sure. I'm doing a lot of work with phycocyanin.
That's
and
really cool.
Yeah.
The beer enzymes, man. That's awesome. Malted barley. That's incredible.
Yeah, just go down to your local homebrew store and pick up some organic malted barley and grind it up and sprinkle it on your plants and see what happens. Water it in.
Awesome advice. The other question is,
I've made beer hundreds of times.
There you go.
Yeah.
The other question I had is, do you want to talk a little bit about your podcast? We've kind of talked a lot about you and your company. Maybe some of the interesting guests you've had, and maybe tell people about when to tune in and how they can follow you and your podcast. I got first introduced to you. You were kind enough to come post in our Aquaponic Cannabis Facebook group, which a lot of you guys know about. The link in the thing. Also, there's a link to all of KIS Organics websites in the description if you're really interested in what Tad has to say. Please go check him out and support him. He has a lot of great things on his website, and if you're looking for especially oddball amendments, please check him out. We love to support people that come on the show. So thanks for taking the time, and I'd love to have you tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate this opportunity, and also you letting me post in your Aquaponic group. That's very kind of you.
Hell yeah.
The podcast I've done, I think, 15 or 16 episodes now. The last one I did was all on biodegradable containers, but we've covered everything from mycorrhizal fungus to what direction in the future of cannabis and hybrid methods, and I've got some really cool ones. In fact, this next one I have, if anyone is growing cannabis for a living, you need to listen to this one, because it's called The Lean Farm by Ben Maxwell, and he talks all about how to efficiently grow any crop. He's on an acre of land and he's grossing over 6 figures, and he's able to do it because he is so efficient, and it's changed the way I farm. So that's one I'm really excited about coming up. And
that's a cannabis podcast.
It is. So the podcast is called Cannabis Cultivation and Science. So if you type that in, it'll pop up. But we're on iTunes.
Do you think you'd mind if I put that on ilovegrowingmarijuana.com in the podcast section?
No, feel free to share it. Yeah, I don't do any real advertising on it. It's just happy to get the information out to growers.
No, that's all we do. We share.
Yeah.
Like this podcast is on there. You'd be, just in the pod, give links so that other people would maybe come and listen to your podcast.
Yeah, Roger runs I Love Growing Marijuana, and they have a whole section for podcasts to help support people putting out good knowledge. So we'll get you up on there too.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, if you leave, well, you got the link here. I'll hook it up later on.
Cool.
All right.
We'll make a.
We really
Tell us
appreciate having
again.
you on, and, really appreciate you giving us an
Here,
hour of your
Steve.
time and telling us all about what you do. I thank you again for coming on the show. It's been great. And does anyone have any last questions for Tad before he takes off?
Well, I'm sorry, I
Thought
interrupted
about
him.
everything I can.
He could keep going on about his podcast for a minute. I interrupted him to see if I could, post it on the forum. But yeah, I think
The
I don't know.
podcast is legit, you guys. I mean, I really appreciate it. It was part of the inspiration for the conference that we put on, to be honest. A lot of speakers that you were pulling out, Suzanne and Dr. Faust and even Jeff Lowenfels. I just, commend you, and thanks a lot, Tad, for doing what you've been doing. It's been really inspirational to a lot of us.
Dude, I just realized who you were. Sorry about that. I just saw your name pop up. I really wish I could have made it to that conference, man. If I had been out of town, I would have definitely been there. So, yeah.
We're well, not to do any promotion, but we're actually going to do another one in Humboldt in March. So we
Cool.
should chat privately about that. But
yeah, hit me up. I'd love to hear how it went from your perspective. So yeah, hit me up on that sometime after the show.
Josh, if you want to announce that publicly, you're welcome to.
yeah, so we did have I mean, Steve, you were there. It was pretty awesome. I got to say, and like I said, it was inspired by a lot of the work that you've been doing, Tad, and a lot of the work that Scott and Eric have been doing down in California. And we had a pretty decent turnout, and I think it was good. It felt really good, and so we got invited to go do it in Humboldt, which is exciting and a little humbling. I mean, as we all know, Humboldt is where it's happening. So to come in there and try to bring some people to speak some education is a little humiliating, or not humiliating, humbling. But it's going to be March 16th, 17th, 18th. And there is actually, as of tonight, there's talk of doing a 2-day microscope class before the conference. That will be really interesting. It'll come with a microscope, so you buy in and you.
I think we lost him.
I think we lost Josh.
Yeah. Whoa. Well, that's cool that you get to take the class, you get a microscope. I like that.
Police helicopter. No, he'll be back in a second.
He'll reboot probably.
Anyways,
just so anybody that hasn't been on the show knows, I think everybody pretty much has been, except maybe Tad, I guess. But we don't necessarily run anybody off when we start moving on. And sometimes, are we doing an after show tonight, Steve?
We can do an after show tonight. We'll probably close the cast and reopen a new one with who's left, and we'll do a separate cast because I had a couple of requests when we ran it long last time. Some people that have phone things that just want to listen to the podcast. It was a little long, so I think we'll split it up into a separate. You'll have to just check back to the channel as soon as this show ends to get to the after show. So, alrighty. Well, thanks again, Tad, for coming on. You want to tell everyone how to find you and everything before you go, or before we switch gears here?
Yeah, well, you have it right there. So just hit me up at kisorganics.com and you can check out what we're doing. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys. So thanks again.
Carried yourself very well, my friend. Carried yourself very well. I'll tell you what. Great.
Pleasure having you on, and pleasure having the opportunity to ask you questions.
Oh, I appreciate it. It was a good opportunity. So thanks again. And yeah, maybe we can chat again in the future. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your night and have a good little after talk.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All righty. Mr. Green Jeans, why don't you tell us what you've been up to in your garden? You're having a little bit of connection trouble, but we'll let you go first.
You know, the rough thing has been testing all these Dutch genetics by myself. You know, I had the G13. I had about 11 of those, and I had 3 super criticals and 3 of these things called AMS, which I guess is short for the letters for the airport there, Amsterdam Airport.
Well, we used to do business with a seed bank in Amsterdam called Amsterdam Seeds, and their initials were AMS.
Well, these guys are
We used to be
green. These
partners
guys
with
are
them.
greenhouse, you know, Gypsy and them guys.
Yeah,
But
interesting.
yeah, the G13s were pretty cool, but you know, they were supposed to be regular seeds, and they were 11 females, right? So what are the chances of that? I looked up
Sounds
the
like
chances
Jones.
of
Yeah.
10, a roll of what is it, the consecutive coin tosses, you know, 10 consecutive coin tosses. I don't got that figure here, but it's pretty low. Like the chances of it are pretty slim. So they must have been feminized seeds, right?
I agree. Yep.
But they were pretty variable, and there was enough variability there. And I'm only gonna save probably 3 of them, and then progeny test those because they were pretty stable for a lot of traits. I mean, there wasn't enough variability to, you know, make some of the selections, you know, very interesting. Some of the traits is like, well, you guys are all pretty much similar for that. So I guess I'll just end up saving, you know, three or 4 of those. The twins weren't particularly.
We always talk about it when you always keep bringing this up after hours and all. We keep talking. Why don't you explain to like people that might be getting into breeding, as far as when you're selecting? What do you mean with with the progeny test? See, you keep telling people, you know, so people out there going, what the hell? They think of vampires because the progeny, like
Progeny test, nice.
Granddaddy vampire was. So
it just basically means growing out the seeds and finding out how they do. It means testing the mother or the father. So it's similar in something like maybe horse racing or whatever like that. You might have a horse that's a great runner, but you don't find out until you try to breed that horse whether it's going to be as equally a good breeding horse as it is a running horse. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, so you're saying that. So you're saying that once you grow out the seed and you breed it, it shows whether it's a good breeder or not. That's the progeny test.
Exactly. So
simpler,
I can see that all these G13s, for example, are stable for a certain number of traits. A certain number of the traits that they were looking at.
You're breaking up again.
We lost Mr. Green Jeans again, I think.
The breeders, and so they pretty much all them interested for. So I figure they'll all have.
Let's switch. Hey, Mr. Green Jeans, let's give your connection a second to settle down.
You know, that whatever 3 ones I just decided on, I assume those traits. Though people, progeny test them for those traits. Sorry, but
no worries. You're good now. It was just lagging bad. It looks like Josh from Dutch. There you go. I got you on cam now.
Sorry, what?
You want to tell us what you got going on there?
Somebody asked me something.
Josh?
Yeah,
Dutch,
sorry I cut out earlier, man. My phone died.
Yeah,
I'm
cool.
just in my office here. I thought I'd just show you guys. This is my little no-till aquaponics setup. This is my personal garden.
Those peppers in there?
Yeah, those are Carolina Reapers. So I'm trying to zoom out a little bit. This is a 4x8 bed. It's a, we'll go in a little closer. There's a fabric bed here. And then a Botanicare bed below it that has a constant layer of aquaponic water growing below it.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's the fish down there in my sump. And I got turtles here. Here's another bed. Same
Nice.
thing. And I'm actually just using this right now to breed out some clones. And there's a tomato back there, and some sage and stuff. I'm mixing a bunch of stuff. I was showing earlier though. This is the hash I was running last night. So, kind of the shit we were talking about at the conference. Just layering. Carbon and bacteria, carbon and nitrogen.
Awesome, man. Looks really good. You want to maybe tell people about the different strains you got rocking in there?
Yeah. Let's see. I got Alien Fire Kush right here. I'm
Hold
looking
on.
at the
Before you get
tags.
started, can you turn your phone sideways, please?
Yes. How's that?
So much better.
Okay. Thank you. Alien Fire Kush, which is it's a cool strain. I'm actually going to run a lot of it this year because it triggers easily, and since a lot of my garden's going to be outside, I'm going to build up a large selection of clones of this Alien Fire Kush, and keep it under 24 hours of light. Put it outside in the garden in mid June, and then keep some artificial lights above it. So I keep it in that 24-hour cycle, and then come 1st of July, I'll turn those lights off, and I'm hoping that it'll trigger early, and I'll be able to finish end of August with it. So
awesome.
Some shit I'm just kind of learning through actually doing some more outdoor, which is cool.
So let me ask you, why do you keep them on 24 hours instead of like an 18.6 or a 24?
Well, it's actually just for the strain. Usually I would run 18.6, but for this strain, it's because it's so sensitive, and because I'm kind of like playing. I'm using this as a technique. Actually, I kind of found out ass backwards from when I was growing indoors 24/7, and then I switched back to 18, and I noticed that they started to go to flower, and I was like, oh, those guys are really sensitive. So I kind of started playing with that concept and thinking about how I can translate to outdoor production, and like trying to get a crop off early, because I live in northwest Washington, like right by Canada, right on the ocean. So it gets really, really moist really early, and so anything I can do to like get my crop to trigger earlier and finish earlier, that's kind of been my mindset.
At the risk of triggering PTSD, do you want to update everyone on the clusterfuck that is the current state of Washington's legal state?
Yeah, well, I'm barely in it. I mean, I'm a legal producer. This is not recreational cannabis. This is my personal medical cannabis here. Otherwise, you'd see a bunch of tags and stuff. I just want a disclaimer to those that would be. But yeah, it's there's a clusterfuck of traceability right now. Yeah, I don't know. I can't even explain how. Most of our product is not traced right now. Is essentially the deal.
Yeah,
and,
it's such a clusterfuck.
Yeah, the government decided to switch from one brand of traceability to another brand, and in that they decided to charge us like I think $200 or $300, maybe $400 more per license. So I hold a producer license, which means I can grow. That's one license, and then if I want to sell that, even as dried flower to a retail store, I need to hold the other license, a processor license. So I have twice the fees, and they were supposed to roll this out in October, and they fucked it up computer technology wise. I don't really understand that part of it, but essentially
the government was involved.
Yeah, and essentially the growers the collectively got together and created a like unit. They called it the Unified Contingency Plan. Aside from the government, and like we just rallied and made this thing happen, and that worked for 3 months. It was a little expensive. We all had to pay in $50 each per license to do it, or per business, not per license.
Somebody asked if those were males in the back right, or if that's basil or peppers or something.
There is that's basil. Yeah, sorry. Yep.
Okay.
There and yeah, these guys they're looking like they need some
Yeah, I
water.
love it. I love it. I did that once. I grew up freaking cucumbers and tomatoes and lettuce and pot all in the same room.
Yeah.
And
Here's
peppers,
my little
you know,
strawberries.
bell
I'm trying to get
peppers. It
these
was
going
cool.
for my son. He's just the young one. There's another one back in there. Yeah, this
Turn off
bed
the
needs
mic.
some water. I'm just getting these things started. So there's lots of stuff going on here. Here's some coffee.
Tell your people a little bit about you have a lot of mixed culture. You have tons of different plants in your garden. You have cover crops, all kinds of stuff that people normally don't have. You want to give people a quick explanation on what's going on in your garden. It's very different than most of the people that have seen, especially on the show. And I'd love to have just a quick explanation of what you got going on, especially after being at the conference last week or a week or two ago.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I'm trying to mix two worlds, the living soil world and the aquaponic world in this garden particularly. And as I've learned in the living soil world, to really kick ass, you have to have always something growing to keep the mycorrhizae going mainly. And the mycorrhizae is, if you will, I guess I actually learned from you, Steve, that this doesn't exist in aquaponics, the mycorrhizae network. And it's like a telephone network for nutrients in the soil, where the plants send out in their roots, they send out exudates that tell the mycorrhizae what nutrients they need at different times throughout their cycle. Even it's pretty fucking cool. And the mycorrhizae network, it's a fungal network, will send that message out, and they'll bring nutrients back to the plants through all these microbes. It's a crazy network. So that's kind of what's going on, and I'm just planting a lot of stuff. Like I have sage in here, and strawberries and basil, and those are kind of just things to repel pests. If you would have looked in this garden 2-3 weeks ago, there was squash and broccoli. We were just growing a lot, and this was all peppers. This whole bed was peppers. We were just growing our food in here, and so there's tomatoes on the back wall. I just decided I needed some more cuts for my summer, so I pulled all the veggies out. And this is my office, and so I was like, I need more cuts, and so I'm just using this space right now to create more cuts for the summer. But does that kind of answer the question, Steve?
Yeah, a little bit. I'd love for you to maybe explain cover crops a little bit, or mixed culture, maybe slightly more, and explain to people why that
the way
helps.
I do cover crops. So yeah, look at this bed right here. If I were to take this to flower, I would probably top the whole thing pretty evenly and throw a trellis, and then I'd grow up some flowers and harvest them, and I'd throw all the leaves, all the stalks, everything right back on the bed. And that's why it looks a little weird. You actually see my ice water hash material from this garden back on top of these beds. And so I just keep layering the material, and after I'd harvested the whole crop, I'd layer all the material down, and I'd throw a cover crop of it's a mix that I use. It's got some peas, some vetch, some clover, some ryegrass, and I let that sprout up in the first. And I also add, a mix of dry amendments, some rock dust, some of the stuff we were talking about earlier that Tad does. I add some alfalfa. I typically have added the seabird guano, and I'm trying to get away from it. Like we were talking about earlier, I had some problems with the buildup of the sodium, and it's not sustainable. So I'll add that, and then the cover crop will grow up, 12, 18 inches. Yeah.
Oh, on the guano note, does everyone know that all guano deposits in the United States territory or territorial waters are federal property? And does everyone know why?
I don't.
No and no.
Bird and bat guano, the phosphorus is used in making plastic explosives for the military. So even this goes back to the 1700s, way back in the pirate days and everything. All these Spain, Portugal, the Dutch, everyone, England, all of them have little islands they own all over, and the
Well, that
sole
makes
purpose
sense
of that,
because it's got ammonia in it.
yeah, so the sole purpose of it was for making gunpowder and explosives. So just so you're aware, if you do go find a cave and some ranger finds you, you could face felony charges if you go and harvest it yourself. Now, when I was in Jamaica, we went and just shoveled our own bat guano out of the caves, and it wasn't a big deal. But they also owned the cave that was on the property where the garden was. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were great. You were about to give a great explanation on cover crops, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to explain to people why they should not just
No,
go
it's
and
good, man.
raid their local island
gonna
or
dig in
whatever
this
because you can
soil.
get felony charges for that and face minimum 10 years in prison. Yeah, if you tell the federal guy that you're stealing the explosive, the bird guano for they're using for explosives for your pot plants, it's probably not going to go too well.
So yeah, basically anyways, just to go back to it, my use in cover crops is a way to keep the mycorrhizae going in between crops, and that green foliage that grows up, I end up like pushing down or cutting back and then dropping straw or carbon back on top of it. So the worms and everything, they just decompose and eat that shit, and it becomes nutrients back to the plants. And it's just one big cycle. And so that's my intention in it, is really to keep the mycorrhizae going and to pull out, like, these different crops that they're actually pulling carbon from the air and turning into nutrients. And so it's no good, in my opinion, to have a bed or a garden that is bare land or just blank. It's actually a big problem for the world. So we should always be growing something all the time, is my thought.
Oh yeah, do you want to tell people a little bit about, just before we totally switch gears, about how those other plants benefit the cannabis plants? Because a lot of people think that steals nutrients, and that was one of the real big takeaways I took from your conference. And just to speak on Josh's conference he threw on the other day in Portland, I've been to conferences that cost over $1,000. His conference was the single most knowledgeable and knowledge-filled conference I've ever been to by a country mile. It wasn't even close.
Well, that's super kind to say, but so it like look at what you see here. Like, this is not the cleanest canopy, but there's no cover crop that you see, I guess, is my point to speak to it. And people's concern that maybe that you'd have a cover crop stealing nutrients. It's all in the cycle and what you're doing. I'm like doing this wave thing with my hand, and that's why I was trying to explain, like, the cycle of when I take it down and then I plant the cover crop, and then it grows up, and then I cut it back, and then I put more straw on top, and that turns back into the ground, and it kind of feeds throughout. So it's not competing with the plants whatsoever. And then there's people use the word cover crop, but there's also companion planting, right? Which is what I have here. I have the cannabis growing with a companion plant, being the strawberry or the basil back there that someone noticed and thought it was a male, or the sage. And what they're doing is just, adding pest repellent in this case. Sometimes, there's some lemon balm right down there that's just growing in a funky ass, what do you call that? That's my reservoir, and I guess it's just a DWC, in my aquaponics, but it's not a good way to do it. No one should do that. But I just have it there because it helps repel the pests. It's like that, and it smells good in my garden. And it takes up some of that.
You're using the companion crops to regenerate, where normally in a grow bed what you're trying to achieve, I think, is that normally in a grow bed you'd add companion crops and all, and you'd keep turning it, but you eventually have to move the crops. You're trying to create an environment where you're using companion plants so that you can still maintain the same crops in the same bed, because you keep mulching in, or composting in, or however you want to say it, and creating a culture with several different plants.
Totally.
Yeah.
And like just playing around. Like this is my office. You know, there's 4 lights in here. I have a greenhouse with that's about to have 84 lights in it. You know, I know that a lot of people are in prohibition and stuff, but this is where I play. You know.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool. I
I'm glad
like
you're,
that. I like that. I would like that very much.
So it's
I'm
yeah,
glad your playpen
I
is
think it's a good point to for people to have that in their life, and not to step away from being economically dependent upon cannabis, and to like really step back and like put some food in there and mix it up. You know, it's okay to be economically dependent on cannabis. I am, but this here is not that.
It's always good to have a little toy grow or experimental grow where you can test ideas and try and make flush out different things that might work, and flush out ideas. I mean, shit, if I didn't have that, we wouldn't have this podcast right now. You know,
Right.
shit.
Yeah, and this is all experimental. And I was talking to Steve about it, and I have a lot of questions and things that I want to figure out about using the aquaponic. It's not a flood drain; it's a constant flood. It's a funky setup I got going here, and there's not much filtration. You
It's
know
a swamp.
what were you saying?
It's a swamp.
An aerated swamp.
It's a swamp.
So
It is.
It's a
does that have a
swamp.
constant
That's
water
where
level?
I live in a swamp. That's the swamp.
Does that have a constant water level, or does that flood and drain?
It does have a constant water level. So that's a 4x8 botanic air tray down here below, right? So there's I think 7.5, 8.5 inches, and there's probably a 2-inch water flow, and then there's 3 or 4 inches of dry gravel. So
Yeah.
if you look back at my feet, actually, I was doing aquaponic dual root zone in this bed, and then I got frustrated, and because I wasn't smart enough, and just threw my no-till right on top of it.
Hey, that's how new ideas get started.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's a went try aquaculture into a swamp culture. Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Some of the nicest plants I've ever seen that were just grown without any fertilizer, were all grown down the Black River in the swamp in Jamaica, right on the Black River, where they just took swamp mud
Oh
and
no.
piled it up to make
I
islands.
like
Grew
it.
the
I
plants
like
on
it. That's I think that's really cool. That's
No,
the
that's
plants
awesome.
adapt. The plants adapt if you keep it safe.
Well, and it would be
You
cool if
gotta-
I was growing something longer than 8 or 9 weeks. Like if I to play with the concept, because just cannabis is too short to test this concept. I'd like to test it outdoors, honestly, and do like raised beds that are 24 inches high and have a constant flood of 2 or 3 inches way down low, and then some rocks and a dry level, and then soil, and I think that would be a really fucking killer way to save a lot of water.
Oh hell yeah! Because you're keeping it all trapped and never gets a chance to evaporate.
Creating a little aquifer.
And getting the benefit. I mean, what you were talking about, Steve, at the conference, not the soil food web, but the fish food web, or the aqua food web. Yeah.
Yep, and I think what we'll find, especially as we do more and more research, is that there's certain nutrients that actually are much better broken down by that aquatic food web, especially when you're looking to do sustainable commercial scale. When I want to scale this up to an acre or 5 acres or 20 acres, when you get to that kind of scale and you can do it this way, the savings are stupid. Like the amount of money you save and power and energy and nutrients, it cuts down on your bottom line. I mean, look at what's happening in Washington. You have people that can't get rid of weed at $3 a gram. If you're gonna actually, we all know the bottom's gonna
Bro,
fall.
three would be awesome. The scene is really, really bad. Like
Yeah.
$1 to
I'm sorry.
$2 a gram
If
for
I said
weed.
if I said $3, I was quoted by someone today telling me they couldn't get rid of weed for 3 cents a gram. Someone I talked to on the phone today. 3
What?
cents a gram could not get rid of weed in Washington. It's bad. It's
I have been sitting on. I froze my whole crop because I didn't have the ability to cure it, so I just put it in freezers. no one has even come put eyes on it, so that says something right there. But I've had it for 28 cents a gram, and this is fresh frozen wet material, right? So you guys can all do the math. It's around $500 a pound dry, in parentheses, no bites
That
since
includes trim.
October. And this is good shit, you know what I mean? Like, but no one's even looked at it to verify if it was good or bad. That's what's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean it's insane what's happened in Washington, and that's why we tell people don't blindly vote for any legalization bill. I can't yell that into the mic enough. We've talked about this 1,000 times on the show. Just because the bill has the word legalization in it doesn't mean it's good for cannabis growers or patients. I mean, look at California where they stripped medical rights. Look at Washington where they completely removed medical cannabis. I mean, we have to be picky. You can't just say, oh, it's a legalization vote, it'll be a good start. No, you end up completely fucking everyone that's put decades of hard work and energy and love and their ass on the line and legal bullshit, and you're throwing them under the bus yourself. You're literally putting their head under the tire by voting for these kinds of blind legalization bills. And I can't stress it enough, but by voting yes on an amendment like the Amendment 64 or the one that passed in Washington, you're literally just crushing everyone that is responsible for the reason why you have weed to smoke right now. And people don't realize that. It's not about blind legalization, it's about proper regulatory structure in the legalization market, not just legalization, let's all be happy. It's not that simple.
I agree with you, Steve. Really like 100%. But just for the background of my story, I'm from Washington, and when legalization hit, I was actually living in Minnesota and growing aquaponic tomatoes and peppers and microgreens, and I'd obviously been really involved in cannabis in the past, but when it happened, I moved back, and I missed the 30-day window when someone could apply to have a recreational grow. And so I read the laws, and as the law stated, it said I-502, which was the law that was voted in by the people, that it would not affect medical marijuana. It said in the bill that was voted in for recreational weed that it would not affect medical marijuana. And I just want to make that point because it was really pertinent. And so when I moved back and I got re-involved with medical marijuana and started doing my thing, I was moving along the lines that it would not be affected, right? And I was new to the scene, I guess, because I was living in Minnesota, but all the people that saw the I-502, the recreational bill, wasn't a good bill, and it wasn't going to be that economical. Didn't jump on board because it said in the bill that it wouldn't affect medical marijuana, and I guess my point is that even if the bill looks good and it looks like it won't affect medical marijuana or won't affect your rights, it somehow, in my experience here in Washington, that the powers that be that have the big pocketbooks change that shit on their own, and it totally sent me on a whirlwind for 3 years, and this was my first crop in 3 years since they killed, or 2 years, excuse me, since they killed medical marijuana, and I'm one of the lucky few that made it past that. So I don't want to be like woe is me, but I use it to tell the story of how true it is that people that worked really hard in this industry for a lot longer than I did really got fucked over by the legislators that were being pushed by the financials.
Oh yeah, that's and it really is a shame what happened in Oregon. I mean, just like you were saying, they literally pulled the rug out from underneath you without any warning. And you guys, it was so underhanded how they tried to fuck the market. It was just beyond wrong, and it's just the kind of shit you have to look out for. And you're gonna see it happen again. Don't think this is gonna be the only state that drops the ball this bad. This is just the first one, but it's a good example of what not to tolerate and what not to put up with. I mean, you guys know that Dennis Barone recently passed away. Do all of you guys know why I know Dennis Perone personally? Because I met him lobbying against Amendment 64. Both of us were vehemently against Amendment 64 because we saw the writing on the wall of what they were trying to do, and they're pulling it off right now. Look at 70% of the guys in California that have small production licenses are owned by 30 or fewer people. It's a handful of large companies that are trying to take over the Cali market when they're not legally supposed to be able to do that until 2022. Why? Because their government officials got fucking paid off and they're shills. They took money. They're corrupt. Let's just be honest here. These are corrupt politicians, and they got paid off. I'm in California, and I know that might not be my best interest to say that, but let's just be honest here. These guys took bribes, and they rigged the market. This is no different than the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, the entertainment industry. These guys do this all the time. What we need is a lobby, and what we need is not a lobby like the Charlotte's Web douchebags that go in and push the Charlotte's Web only, CBD only bullshit. They're just as bad as the prohibitionists, 100% as bad. And I've crucified those guys at 5 or 6 different shows, and one of the times they actually had to leave the stage. They're a joke. But this is the shit we can't tolerate. We fought too hard. Too many of us have gone to jail. Too many of us had family members go to jail. Too many of us have lost thousands of dollars.
By the way, welcome to the political rant portion of our show, ladies and gentlemen. Carry on, Steve.
Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion.
Steve, yeah, you need a dab, okay?
It's been
More
a few
of
months.
it.
I've been sick. I
More.
haven't been smoking much weed. I'm more.
Go
angry
on,
than
Steve.
usual.
Go on.
But this is again. We hear time and
Tell
time
it.
again, oh, legalization. We got to vote legalization. We'll get it all changed later. No, you won't. What you will have is the rug pulled out from underneath you, medical rights pulled away, and your grandma is now dying of cancer or having seizures, and she can't even get meds. Why? Because she's supposed to pay $200 a fucking eighth for fuck knows what at the dispensary because the only option she has is recreational, and they crashed the market, so now there's only a handful of producers and everyone's jacking the price up. This is exactly what happened in Oregon, exactly what happened in Washington, exactly what's probably going to happen in California. I watched what happened in Colorado. Colorado had the right idea. Do medical and then structure it like the medical. Set up regulatory inspectors and everything to make sure everything is done correctly and safely, but don't just go fucking with people for the sake of trying to make money incessantly. And what they do when they do have an update on IPM for existence, they give people 90 days to update their IPM schedules. Not, okay, your entire crop is now worthless. Fuck you. No, that's not reasonable. What they do is say, okay, here's the new standard. From now on, starting in 3 months, we're going to enforce this standard. Now you have time to adjust your SOPs, adjust your income level, adjust any expenditures, and make this reasonable for your company. You know how normal business works. Sorry, this whole thing, I'm so frustrated right now with a couple of different regulatory things, and it's partly coming out on this, but I had to rant on this because especially what Josh is going through. I mean, literally, I spoke with someone on the phone today that wanted to sell me their license in Washington because they could not sell weed at $3, 3 cents, 0.3 dollars, $0.03 per gram. Could not unload it, and this isn't garbage weed. This was Sensimelia that didn't have mold or insects on it. That was good. Why? Because of regulatory issues, not because of any issues with the market. So, sorry, I don't normally. It's been a while since I've had a good rant. What about
It was
Tommy
good,
J? You
good
still there?
stuff.
Yeah, I'm here.
You're
I'm
fading.
just
Let's
thinking
get you. Let's
it's
get
a
you
little
next.
scary to say the Trump word after you're going on a rant like that.
Oh, Trump's not going to do shit. I could tell you guys a couple of reasons. Actually, you want to know? I'm glad you bring that up. One of the big reasons why Trump's not going to do shit. Hopefully, you guys all saw the good news this week. The federal government approved the very first credit union that is specifically for cannabis growers.
California.
The federal government. So if the federal government was about to launch a crackdown, why the hell would they approve a credit union? Short of trying to bait everyone in there.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
hell yeah.
the word greenbacks, doesn't it?
Yeah, greenbacks. But
It's good.
I mean, I know in California you could buy weed as low as $50 a pound before the end of the year because everyone's panicking because of the new markets in California because of the new testing regimen and everything. So you're seeing this affect not only Washington but even in California, where we have one of the biggest cannabis markets on the planet, if not arguably the largest cannabis market on the entire face of the earth, and we're having these issues. Okay, so what's going to happen when you have states like Kentucky or Kansas or Pennsylvania or South Carolina or wherever that have way less populations that have to deal with this? You're going to have 2 or 3 weed barons that control the whole state is what you're going to have. Anyways, I'll stop ranting.
I want to be a baron.
What have you been up to, Tommy?
I want to be a baron.
Keep on driving the prices down. What we want is a 5-pounder and at the end of every cul-de-sac in America.
Yeah, you can always do the old Mark Emery thing. Outgrow the government. Everyone grow their fucking
overgrow.
It'll
be so abundant, good quality, abundance everywhere. The generous and
it was hilarious.
Can't fight that.
Legal marijuana comes to Washington, and then the price drops so low that the black market can do jack shit. And now the state's freaking out again, and they want to control stuff. It's like, wait a second, you wanted to get rid of the black market. You've done that. You not only got rid of the black market, you damn well killed the white market. If they're on life support right now. And now they're just going to go crazier. And I'm like, man, this is dumb as a bag of hair. And that's me talking about dumb as a bag of hair. Okay.
I'd just be happy if they just allow you to grow your own weed and medicine and do what you want to do and leave us alone. I don't care about the business end of anything. Let everybody be able to grow their own vegetables and their own weed, and the rest of it, everybody can have all that corporate stuff.
That's why I said at the end of every cul-de-sac. I mean, you got you got to go down and police the go down and check at the end of that cul-de-sac, and there's, oh my gosh, a 9-pounder. And so, if there's 2 or 3 on every block, then everyone has to gift, because everyone's a connoisseur now and everyone wants variability. Connoisseurs got a couple of jars, mini jars, right? So your friends are going to be giving you some, and you're going to be giving them some.
It's like people that brew beer. They trade a small keg or a couple, cases of their beer with their buddy who's growing something else from some special plants he gets from his mom.
Yes, and the thing about legally, getting back to the whole legal rant, when you withhold medicine, there's 2 fronts to that. Like you can't withhold medicine from 6-year-old girls who have. You also can't withhold medicine from another group of girls, 80-year-old ladies who don't have enough money. You can't send them down to the dispensary, like Steve said. Yeah. I mean, it's not those things, and it already happened up here in Pasadena, I believe. I think it was in the city. So when you get into a fight there in a city like that, the old lady who needs to grow her medicine in the backyard, she wins. And it's going to happen all over. You can't, that precedent is a social precedent. It isn't a law thing, you know what I mean?
The problem is you very rarely get a cantankerous old hen like that who'll keep fighting. And I think the rest
I don't even know if it was one cantankerous old hen or whether it was other people just standing up for him.
Fighting, because by the time
complaints go to Tommy J and Hart,
they need to have been taken care of. That those of us who are able-bodied have already fought for them.
Yeah. That's the thing, is you can't and that's the the really expanding markets and the expanding social interest and consciousness is more in medical. So many older people and stuff should be regularly on cannabis, lower dosages internally to help with their metabolism and keep them, keep the brain functions up, right? I know it was only tests in mice, but showing the reversal of cognitive decline and all this kind of stuff. So, the future of medical cannabis is pretty bright. I feel like recreationally everybody's already pretty happy. Although you can get people to smoke more, but I think the recreational market is often underestimated. I think it's a lot bigger than people think. I mean, it seems bigger here in California.
It dwarfs the medical. The medical is basically a bullshit market to allow for the recreational market.
Well, how can you even separate the two? I mean, obviously, a preventive medicine is the best medicine. So everybody who's using it recreationally is.
When I went down to get my medical license, I had no fucking clue. I mean, just so you know how stupid I am. I went in there with my MRIs and all my paperwork. I'm missing 7 discs from my spine. And while I'm standing there waiting for my turn to go see the doctor, nobody was actually seeing the doctor. They're actually just talking to a webcam. I get sent in to see the doctor actually. But the people before me, the first 3 people I'm sitting there watching, they all had vision problems. And what they explained to this webcam was they couldn't see themselves living without marijuana. That was their vision problem. And here I've got my actual paperwork and stuff. The doctor actually wanted to see me, and what I figured out afterward was she wanted my real medical stuff on her files so that when she got audited, she had proof that she's really serving honest-to-God customers. But everybody else in that office, they all had vision problems. They could not see themselves living without marijuana.
But what's the problem with that?
Well, there's no problem, but honest to God, that's not a medical market. That's a cover for a recreational market. No bullshit. Let's call it.
If you can provide people with their medicines one way or the other, that's a medical market.
Every one of the, I'm in there on my fucking walker, okay, on my handfuls of opiates and everything like that. I'm suicidal from the pain. These people are strapping young bucks with all the fancy 22 years old. Yeah, they were not in the same shape as the old part. I'm just saying.
I mean, the fact is, this shouldn't be illegal in the first place. So
correct. Oh, I agree with you there. Let's not call the recreational market medical, and let's not call the medical market recreational. Let's call it what it is. Service the recreational market fully. Let them pay their taxes, and then those of us who are passionate about getting this medicine for real to people, we should have a different set of rules, because very often we're giving the farm away. Really, And so make money in recreational and love on people in medical.
That's a great, I like that. That's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, and it's fair. You're a strapping young buck. You can afford an extra $10 because you're still on the roof working. And Granny, she's living on $37 after her nursing home takes all of her money. She's got nothing. You got to drop some green on that old lady. I mean, because she's the one who raised you.
I mean, I see your point, but I still don't see why young people shouldn't be able to have medical cannabis if they need it.
If it's real. Yes. But
I feel like you're separating young and old people here.
If you're trying to go in there and to honest to God who it is, real medical. One way you can tell, if somebody does almost nothing except for edibles, that's a real medical person.
I don't know. If you're giving people a medical card and giving them a way to get cannabis, then you're doing something good by my.
Well, I believe that. I believe that overall. I just think as our industry and those of us who are doing this, we should quit lying to ourselves about what's really medical and what's not medical, because as we're lying to ourselves, we can't set up reasonable laws and getting people to stay in their lane. If we're honest about who we are as an industry, and yes, over 90% of the people who have medical cards has nothing to do with fucking medical. They just want their pot and they don't want to get busted. God bless them.
I mean, there's some states that have legit medical laws as well. So I mean, you can't just lump them all together.
Yes, and I think we are lumping them together. That's what I'm advocating for. And I think as a group, we can be clearer amongst ourselves so that we better support each one of those communities, because they both have their place in the marijuana world. but I think we do disservice to medical people when we're not servicing them fully because we're really trying to sneak recreational under the tent, get the camel's nose under the tent, and then we're not fully servicing recreational people who don't want to jump on one foot and pat their belly and
I don't totally agree with that, Tommy. I don't totally agree with that. No, most of us
That's what I'm saying. I can't really completely get on board with that because your alternative is you have to go on the streets and find it illegally.
Oh, no, no, no.
Like I said, if you can provide a way for people to get that legally, I don't care if it's not legitimate medical or whatever, you're doing a service to people.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact I don't think, it's not about, we've been fighting for medical and the medical's medical. And, I wasn't onto the necessarily. We've all wanted for it all to be legal for everyone, and we've all wanted to be medical. But if it's going to be medical, there are stringent guidelines for it. Now suddenly it's all legal recreational, and they're not necessarily having to follow those guidelines. And like somebody said, it's a lottery for who gets to the big ticket to sell to everybody in the States.
Right, and I also agree though that there should be some guidelines if you're going to be selling medical that you should be legit medical. Otherwise, you should go to the recreational market. You know what I mean? But there absolutely is a place for medical. And regardless, and I see your point that it delegitimizes the medical to be having all these people that are coming through with their little bullshit. I can't see myself without marijuana or whatever, But if you're going to have a medical, there should be lines drawn.
Yeah,
there
I get
should
real
absolutely be
medicine for
lines
real
drawn.
people, and they get fucked with. And out of everybody, those are the people who are already sick. They're already broke. We can't be fucking with them. I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly. And to go along with that, medical marijuana should be insurable. If you have medical insurance or whatever, you should be able to put that on your medication for insurance and get that for free. And that is what makes your argument legitimate, Tommy. Is that should be a thing. If you need cannabis medicinally, you should be able to pay for that medicine with insurance.
And what I like to say real quick too is it's about everybody should be able to grow their own, but if they have to go out and buy it, or if you're gonna grow it to sell it, no matter whether you're for recreational or for medical, if you're gonna grow it and sell it or use it for meds or medicinal or edibles or anything like that, you should have to follow the same guidelines as food grade or medicinal guidelines across the board. If you just want to have flour, I think flour should be left on a different plane than the companies that are going out and trying to do medicinals and edibles and stuff. That all should be under the same stringent guidelines as medical marijuana.
I'd like to flour's down to 30% here in California, I think, in the dispensaries in terms of sales. It used to be 75% only about 4 years ago, but it's gone way down in dispensary sales, and now it's all concentrates. Well, down to around 35%, something like that now.
You're going to see a big switch to concentrates into hashes, especially as the price drops for flour. It only makes sense. I mean, all of us know if we had the option, we'd all smoke hash over weed every day. Why? Because it's cleaner, it's smoother, it's not as harsh, it's not as shitty, it doesn't hurt your lungs as bad. It's a better product. It's a more refined product. There's nothing being combusted. Everything's being vaporized. So it's just a safer, healthier product, which is a good thing for all of us. But you do see, and I'm glad Zach in chat said this week, you see the terpenes. Now, what's wrong with the pens? They have propylene glycol in them, which makes them almost impossible to take. Fortunately, Tommy has come up with a way to get around that problem, which we'll be showing off later this year publicly. We're still working on tying everything up.
What's up with the genetics about what goes into them? What is the exact strain that goes into them? You can't
well, that's something. Thankfully, hopefully, no one will be able to patent any genomes or anything because that's definitely something that you don't want. But you have that. What's the name of the project? I can't remember the name of it, but there's a cannabis project where they went and they documented all the genomes and put them into public
That's
domain.
DJ Shorts, the open source thing. I'm totally into that. I support that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that specifically was started in order to undermine these companies trying to patent strains and shit because they didn't develop them. Nobody developed them. There's no one living right now that has developed a strain from scratch. You're full of shit. You started from
wait a
somewhere.
minute.
You
I've
got
done a
genes
couple.
from somewhere else. No. But you got genes.
I've done a few.
Else. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's true. Of course.
All of them.
You have to.
You got those seeds from somewhere, and if you got those seeds from somewhere that are public domain, you can't take two public domain and then make a new thing. You know, and that's what all this is about. I don't care if everyone has their strains and wants to sell their strains. Great, sell your strains, but you shouldn't have the ability to go and take legal action against someone that's growing the same strain as you. You know what I mean? That's bullshit. Or unless you GMO them, which is a separate argument. But I think we're universally against GMOs here, at least with our bud.
No, we need to get together. We need to do breeding projects together. The whole thing of hoarding genetics and stuff like that. It's not cool with cannabis. It doesn't. We need group participation. We can do much better. We can take the genetics much faster and further into the future, and we start doing everything together. You know what I mean? As a group.
Tide floats all boats.
We had a quick question from Travis. Is this Roger from True Aquaponics still here? Because he hasn't talked since the early part of the episode. I'm kind of curious myself. If not, I'm probably gonna let him go here. All right. Well, I guess he left us. If not, check him out, truealcoholics.com. He was here earlier. I think he probably passed out at the keyboard. He has to get up a little earlier than the rest of us. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us. All right. But yeah, I mean, I lost my train of thought earlier. But Roger was right, and we really got to be careful about some of the shit that's going on in the market right now because it could impact us all long term a lot.
I heard about a way of making a solvent or pen replacement to replace the cartridges with a mixture of rosin. You know, so if you're using a press like what Brain has, and you're doing rosin pressing, and then there's something, I guess mixing with the glycol, the propylene glycol, or some other. I think someone makes a commercial product that can be used.
The problem is that they're buying weight of propylene glycol and not cannabis. So my gram is my gram of weed is now 0.9 grams of weed, or 0.95 grams of weed instead of 0.1 gram. 1 gram of weed. So that's the problem. And then you have, and I'm glad Brian brought this up. You have people putting fake terpenes. I know, and I'll call this asshole out because he's a douchebag. Daryl Cotton, who was on one of the episodes of this show, I had the mistake of, or displeasure of working for that piece of shit. He is the person I have met that grows weed that has committed the most felonies that I've witnessed. Anyways, fuck that douchebag. But he was spraying his weed with artificial terpenes and trying to resell it to people, which I thought was one of the scummiest things I've ever seen. So you do have unscrupulous sellers out there that will go and spray their tops of their pounds with just terpenes or citrus terpenes or individually derived terpenes from other sources that are
give it the bag
out there. Yeah, I mean they're just doing it to flip shitty weed. And if you're a shitty fucking broker and you're incapable of actually doing your job, yeah, you have to rely on shit like that. But
yeah, a good smell is definitely important.
Shit on people, but he's probably the worst human being I've ever met on this planet. So that's actually how Tommy and I met, actually, and Dennis Perone, actually.
What kind of things was he spraying on? Sorry.
Oh no, he was just spraying anything.
He didn't care.
As long as it's sold, and he'd tell anybody it was whatever it was. If it was THC bomb, he'd tell you it's ACDC if you wanted CBD. It didn't matter. But you have a handful of these people in Cali and other markets that just, they could give a shit less. They're in it for money, and they do not care what it is that they're trying to do and what kind of material that they want. And they'll pass off anything. they just don't give a shit. And you're seeing more and more of that in the market as the bottom falls out of it, as people just simply trying to survive and not and losing their morals.
That's not playing the long game, man. You know, cannabis is all about the truth. You know, marriage is the truth. You know, playing the long game. That's the only way you can breed. You know, breeding cannabis. Like I said before, Feynman's first rule. You know, the first rule is not to fool yourself, and you are the easiest one to fool. So, and you know that should be.
There's a good question in chat.
That should be everybody. Sorry.
Indica in chat asks, doesn't True Terps have that? No, True Terps actually derives their terpenes from actual cannabis medical plants, not from other plants. Now, for example, you can derive limonene from most citrus plants, or you could derive.
I don't think True Terpenes is cannabis exclusive. I think they use different plant materials.
Really? I'll have to double check on that. I thought
so.
they were cannabis exclusive. I'll double check.
Yeah, I would think so too. Yep. I think so too.
I mean, there's plenty of plants out there that produce a variety of terpenes that's the same ones that cannabis produces. So, you know, in the end, what's the difference?
What's the
if you're
difference?
isolating terpenes? If you're isolating the terpenes.
If an isolated terpene is one thing, a terpene that comes in a group is different. And you already know this. If you think about THC is the same THC molecule in every single plant you've smoked. The reason a sativa and an indica hit you differently is the
What I'm talking about is if you're isolating terpenes, what difference does it make what plant it comes from?
Well, if you're isolating, it doesn't make a difference. I guess I'm just trying to advocate for
pure.
He's saying they can't be isolated.
That's basically what they do is.
They can be isolated, and just for the record, I'm on True Terpenes website. They do actually derive it from non-cannabis plants, so I stand corrected. But the thing is that so individual isolated terpenes is fine. The problem is that isolated terpenes don't blend as well when you combine them as they do when they're produced on the cannabis plant. There's some other thing there that doesn't give you that same blend. I know that when I've mixed some of these, and I'll be honest with you, I actually have a 16-pack of True terpenes that they sent me, and I'll be honest with you, mixing those together, even in the right ratios, doesn't taste the same as some of the stuff that we make with this new extraction method, even though chemically it's pretty freaking similar. It just doesn't have the same flavor. Also, a lot of these are very volatile. That's one other thing.
Are they based after the strains? Are they derived from the cannabis plants, the ones that you got?
No, they're individual. Something like Blue River terpenes would be a little bit better because they're actually completely derived from medical cannabis plants, and they're a full blend of terpenes rather than individual. But even then, and in fact, Tommy could speak on this probably better than anyone else on the panel about how they break down. Would you want to give us a little bit of knowledge there, Tommy?
Well, without going too much into different extraction methods, a lot of the solvents that you use to do the extraction will basically fuck with certain groups of the terpenes out of the terpene groups. But when you're going to extract out of the plant, you're not trying to identify each terpene. Like, for example, in America, we only test for about 23 terpenes. Israel's claiming over 200. So how do you even fucking know what you're putting in your product? You don't. You don't even know what you're getting out. What I know from extracting is different solvents, different temperatures,
unless you have a lab,
polarities that I'm using will get different groups out. There is no solvent out there, just doesn't exist, that will get everything you want out of the plant. The best I've been able to do is do a two-pass method with different solvents, and I take the top end, and then I go back and I get a little more rapey on the plant, and I'll take the bottom stuff out where I get most of my CBDs and my THCs, but I'm taking all my delicate terpenes off the top with a completely different molecule that doesn't necessarily interact or break down the terpenes like an ethanol will. But later on, for getting the THC and the CBD and a bunch of that other stuff, ethanol is fucking brilliant, man. So, like, I'll go a two-pass kind of a thing. So, well, I guess overall, like what Steve was talking and some of the panel members are talking here, the isolated terpenes, yes, you can isolate a terpene. Are you sure you want to? It's the same thing as if you take CBD and THC. You can isolate them 100%. Great. You have a crystallized CBD. CBD was already hard to uptake into your body through smoking or eating. It's a hard molecule to get into your monkey. Now you've purified it. You're a fucking brilliant chemist. You've just made a hard to digest molecule even harder. And I think we wind up in the same place with this terpene kind of a thing. Somebody's identified a terpene because it's on their list of 23 when they go down to the lab and test it. We're just not, I don't think, educated enough to say those are the 6 terpenes we want in our thing. I think we should all advocate for, until we know everything about that plant, let's just take everything out of the plant and start there, and we can start removing stuff later, rather than like what Daryl's doing, taking a piece of moldy shit bud, spraying some lemonade on it so somebody says, oh, that's the banging, you know, and yeah, it just gets old. So I'll shut up. I get on my soapbox too.
I mean, the terpene concentrates are more used for like dabbing and whatnot. I know that if you've ever seen the Hash Church podcast, they talk about it all the time, is using the terpene concentrates to add to their dabs and use it that way, or, you know, whatever. And I'm pretty sure even the true terpenes.
All those terpenes. Because those terpenes, you should not be smoking them. You should not be doing that. If it's just purely for flavor and you're acknowledging that. But if you want terpenes for their medical benefit, you eat them. About 5% of the terpenes.
I'm pretty sure everybody that's doing it there is doing it for recreational benefits. So I don't know what the big deal is.
Well, the problem is that you have to remember a lot of these terpenes behave just like VOCs. Some of these are as damaging depending on ratio. So if they're below a certain threshold, they're fine, or they're harmless, or they're very, very mild. But above a certain threshold, i.e., doing concentrates of terpenes, which I've seen people do at shows, I've also seen people cough up blood 5 minutes later. Why? Because you basically just chemically smoke something that's not too different from butane. Some of these terpenes chemically are basically identical to hydrocarbons.
Yeah, you do not want to smoke these things. You don't smoke jet fuel. You don't smoke kerosene. You should not smoke some of these terpenes. They're the same fucking thing. They just taste better.
You wouldn't do a dab of ethanol. Fuck, all of us know not to do a dab of ethanol. It's the same thing, but people don't realize it. Like, just straight up, go look at the chemicals of some of these terpenes and look at how many molecules different they are, or how many atoms different they are than ethanol. Some of them
I can prove it. I can prove it on an extract column. So I take all my stuff, I put in my ethanol. I've got my mash, let's say, in my tank, and I'm boiling off my ethanol. I can't avoid, even with reflux columns, bubblers separating it, to get back to a 200 proof ethanol after you've soaked it in marijuana is all but impossible without probably $1 million of equipment. So that's how close these molecules are. You cannot even get them separated in a column when you're recovering your solvents. So if they're that close, you go look at the chemistry book. You want to scare yourself, say, hey, I'm going to start dabbing ethanol. I'm going to take 151 Bacardi and start dabbing it in my dab rig. And go read about that at those temperatures and everything, and you won't fucking do it. The same exact molecule groups. In fact, some of the ethanols and stuff are even produced in the plant. I mean, that's why some of these solvents work on some of these molecules, is they're so freaking close. And people haven't stopped to do the math that when I put those things at 600 degrees or more, I go into a completely different chemistry book than when I'm eating these molecules. And so, yeah, some of these people that are just like terpene, yeah, they're just basically putting the equivalent chemically of like Clorox or something in your stuff. It tastes good, but damn, bud. And don't get me wrong, I'll cough up blood with the rest of them. I like the taste too. And I make some of these dab kinds of things. I don't smoke as much as other people. I really enjoy them. But I acknowledge every time I put a match to that thing, I say, yeah, this is kind of stupid. But, I drink a little bit more than I should, and I chase women a little bit more than I should too. There it is.
All right, I had to mute Mr. Green Jeans there. Can you guys hear me? I feel like you guys can't hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, your voice is a little bit low though, Steve.
I'm sorry about that. This microphone's been really shitty tonight. I don't know why. It's the same mic I always use, but it's being extra finicky. I'm gonna have to maybe get a new microphone, I guess.
You just got to your regular volume the first time all night, just now, somehow.
Well, I'm putting my finger on the microphone, so.
Well, then I guess you know where your fingers have got to be on the dike, then.
Oh, ask any woman I've ever dated. I know where to put my fingers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But it's, anyways, what do you got going on, Brain Grow and Your Grow?
Coming up on harvest, actually, I just barely cut off the water flow to one of my grow beds, from one of my grow beds to from my aquaponic water supply, cut off the pump supply to that grow bed. That's what I was trying to say. So I'm fixing to be hand watering it for the next week and a half with just straight water and letting it just flush. So be coming up on harvest on that one. And it's put on a lot of weight within the past week. Like it was looking like real skeletal, and then just all of a sudden it just came out of nowhere, and buds are just laying over and getting super heavy with oil. So I'm pretty happy with that. And super dark purple buds too, so beautiful strain. And then one of my other plants, I have already started putting it in the dark for the last 24 hours. I'll probably harvest it tomorrow. And I actually had cut off some buds from that one a little bit early and made some rosin earlier today, and that stuff came out amazing. Another thing that happened today that was pretty awesome is I got a little cactus cutting of a Bridgesii Montrose, which is like the Montrose version of the San Pedro cactus. So I'm looking forward to growing that little thing out, and with my mycology projects, that is doing awesome. Like
Hey,
I've been
using.
using.
You know what works better for that to make them grow quicker? Use the labs.
What's that?
Lactobacillus. Remember how we talked about? I think it was
Mhm.
episode 152 about the phycocyanin lactobacillus ferments. They work really good on cacti and have very few side effects.
Awesome.
Whereas a lot of the other compost teas are too rich, and you can actually burn them. Believe it or not, when I used to run an aquaponic source, I used to head up the showroom there, and I had a whole jungle. But I used to have 5 or 6 cactuses in the media beds next to kale and lettuce and watercress and
Wow.
Australian cherry tree, which is basically a swamp tree. And it's a cactus. You wouldn't think a cactus would grow in a flood and drain media bed. But they do
Right.
just great. Believe it or not, as long as you give them gas exchange. They need the gas exchange. That's all cactuses give a shit about is gas exchange. I'm coming from the desert. They have almost zero, not zero, but almost zero mycorrhizal networks. They have very little mycorrhizal action going on. A lot of succulents and cacti use little to no mycorrhizate. Some do, but in general, it's a less mycorrhizal dependent plant than most species. So it can be something that will grow well in aquaponics, believe it or not, even though it's a cactus and you generally wouldn't think it would want that much water.
Right. So another thing I've been working on is my mycology projects. If you've been following my Instagram, you know what I've been doing with that. I've actually had a customized substrate that I was just testing out on a whim, and it turns out it's working. So I was actually taking some of the dried pumpkin that I've been using in my aquaponic system to feed my plants, added that into the substrate. Then I mixed that with powdered pumpkin seed, brown rice flour, which is the normal substrate that you use for the PF Tech method. And then I also added in ground up, ground up rye berries. So basically rye flour as well. Mixed all of those things together and then added in a little bit of coffee grounds along with that and vermiculite. Added in the correct ratio of water. I sterilized that with the new pressure cooker I had bought. So I've been really putting in some time, effort, and investing a little bit of money into making this successful for myself. But after sterilizing the jars, inoculated them as usual, and since then I've been having some pretty awesome mycelium growth. I'm probably at about 30% colonized on one of my jars already. It's doing the best because it actually has 3 inoculation points, as per my other 3 only have 2. So I've been having a little bit of fun with that and watching that grow. The jars are staying beaded with moisture, so I feel like that's the only thing that's going to stop it from growing is if for some reason they dry up. And right now they're showing no signs of drying up. So hopefully I'll be able to take those to fruiting in another couple of weeks or so. That'll be pretty exciting because that's going to be my first successful mushroom grow. Other than that, like I said, just getting ready for harvest, man. I got my other Ninja Fruit Pheno number 3. I've been posting pictures of all that stuff to the ilovegrowingmarijuana.com as well. So everybody that's been checking that out knows what I'm talking about. The Ninja Fruit number 3 is just growing like crazy. And I have noticed one thing that I will mention, and this is the one that I've had in the basically the recirculating deep water culture situation. Since it's been getting a little warmer, I've noticed the tips of the leaves are starting to curl a little bit. So that I can probably say that a low water temperature has been one of the reasons that I've had such successful results with that plant. So I'm gonna be trying to push that temperature back down and see what we can do for that one. But other than that, man, everything in the grow is going awesome. Like I said, my mycology project's doing awesome. Got my little penis cactus is what it's called, or the penis plant, not penis cactus. There's something else that's completely different.
You talking about a pepper plant?
The what?
The pepper plant, the penis pepper plant?
No, it's a pecker.
No. The cactus. It's a cactus.
But they actually have a pepper
Brigesii
plant.
montrose. It's a variation of the San Pedro. And I'm not sure if it's the Trichocereus peruvianus or the Trichocereus. What's that one?
Are you strictly doing PF tech, or are you also doing beds? Have you tried doing bed spawning?
I haven't. I've just I'm kind of starting with this. You know, I've been having a lot of trials with this with no success.
Can I give you an easier recipe? And I'll share it right now. And I probably shouldn't, but I'm gonna share it all with everybody anyway. So instead of doing what you're doing, spawn on soaked millet, like birdseed, millet heavy birdseed. Spawn on that, and then colonize on that, and then when you transfer to beds that have coca coir, coffee grinds, and a little bit of calcium carbonate. That's all you need, along with your spawn, and it'll work
So like
10 times.
where I'm at right now is I'm just barely trying to get the mushrooms to grow. You know, I haven't even had a successful fruiting yet. But what I want to get to is the agar method, because with that you're able to isolate your strains. You can have a monoculture.
No, you can do it easier. Let me tell you. Okay, so I did a bunch of just quick background. So I did a bunch of consulting work with a company called Turtle Island Farms. They're based in Colorado, and we did a bunch of mushroom growing: oyster mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, lion's mane mushrooms. I also have other knowledge that we won't get into, allegedly. But regardless of what species your mushroom you're growing, with a handful of exceptions, oysters being one of them, you're very much better off doing the coca coir, the birdseed, the calcium, and the coffee, because regardless of what species of gourmet or otherwise mushrooms, it tends to be the best spawning material, regardless of what you're doing, and really does the best produce. It also helps control your contamination, which, as you know, is your biggest enemy.
Yeah, well, see, that's where I was going with the agar method. Whenever you get to where you're using the agar method, if you can have sterile trays of that, then that allows you to really work on your cultures. And whenever you have a monoculture, you're basically cloning one particular mushroom that's growing awesomely, you know, and everything that grows is basically a clone of that mushroom, similar to how we do with plants. And that's what I'm trying to get to with the agar method. That way, whatever substrate that I'm using, you know, I'll be able to just drop that on there and know that there's no bacterial contamination or anything like that, you know. I mean, I'm absolutely all for trying your method, you know what I'm saying? It sounds awesome, you know, and, you know, it's like I just
But you're not going to stop him from doing his own test and research, Steve.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let me
Gonna
finish
do it.
to him how to do that with this method. I'm trying to get to that. So what you do is instead of doing the agar, saves a little bit of mycelium from each jar that you colonize previously with the PF Tech before you put it into the bed spawn. Save just a little piece, maybe the size of a sugar cube, in a Ziploc bag and label it and put it in your refrigerator. Then each individual colonized jar has a label, a number, and a designation or a description. You can then back catalog thousands of them in your refrigerator, keep them permanently suspended so you can use them for breeding programs at any time and propagate them indefinitely in any kind of quantity that you want and keep them as breeding stock. And what I would allegedly used to do was separate my speed, my potency, and my uh, size ones, and you could back cross them into your production strain depending on, especially with lion's veins and other things that you really want to be careful about and get even production. If I'm going to produce this commercially and produce it for a farmer's market, I need to have them even. So by doing that and with the PF Tech method for colonization with the jars and then switching to the bed spawn for spawning, and the fact that I have just a little sample of each jar and I catalog them all, I can then back catalog that entire thing, throw them away maybe every 2 or 3 months, the ones I haven't used, and just keep the better ones. And then you have those, and those are good for up to 2 years that you can respawn those in a refrigerator kept at 38, 36 degrees. They will stay in suspended animation, and then you can basically have this entire back catalog of genetics that you can know, okay, these 2 jars made this little fruiting bed and that spawned these really good ones. I can save that genetics. I already have the precursor genetics from the mycelium, and then I can back spawn them or back breed them with whatever other mycelium. I just cross the 2 mycelium in my spawn jars when I want to crossbreed them and improve my traits going forward. And then you can develop a really good production strain and constantly tweak the knobs on it without having to worry about fucking your production strain.
So I feel like
That's cool.
that's all solid, but like if I'm getting a lot of
Allegedly.
feedback somewhere. That threw me off. I'm sorry. So like I feel like that's all, the agar basically with the petri dishes makes it easier to do what you're talking about. Like you're basically storing your genetics in a smaller disc size container, you know what I mean? And you can have stacks and stacks of those containing whatever genetics that you want. But the benefit to that is since you're growing out your mycelium on a very thin surface, you can see exactly what it's doing. And like I said, you can produce your monoculture that is essentially a clone from a single mushroom if you're trying to get that pinpoint accurate with it. Or if you like, a cluster of genetics, like you said, like is a cluster of mycelium from already growing spawn, like you said, then you can just do it that way, But I feel like still storage-wise, the agar petri dishes is probably the way to go. And that's where I'm trying to get to. I haven't even ordered any petri dishes or anything like that yet, but that's where I'm trying to get to. That way I can just go and grab a little petri dish out of whatever and cut a little pizza slice out of there and throw it in there, and just that mycelium will just start growing.
Make your own stuff. It's easy as snot. Just get yourself an inoculation hood. It's called the sandblasting cabinet. It's a benchtop sandblasting cabinet from Harbor Freight. They sell it as a sandblasting cabinet. They're
right. I remember you were talking about that on the last episode. I remember that.
And everything. You need that and a roll of foil tape. Make your own pressure cooker. You can make your own agar. It's easier than making oatmeal, literally. And
yeah, definitely. You can. I mean, you basically have to make your own agar with the method. It's all. You basically have to make all your own everything when you're talking about mushrooms.
Yeah, you can buy it. It's just spending.
Yeah, we did. We talked about that last week, I believe. Using the old the glove hood. The glove compartment.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yep. We used to sandblast motorcycle parts and those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to check out all the stuff that I'm talking about, check out my Instagram because like I said, I'm having some success with the substrate that I'm using.
Yeah.
And I'll be trying to move to the agar plate soon, and it's all fun and games. It's awesome. It's all science. It's all.
Somebody gets high. Then it's really good.
But yeah, coming up on harvest and whatnot. But I think that's about it for me.
Actually, I don't know if I should even finish this sentence. So have you ever done take what you made and put it in like alcohol to make a concentrate instead?
Out of what now?
Of what you grew with the mycology.
No, I'm telling you, I haven't even had a successful fruiting yet. That's what I'm still working on. This is gonna be if everything goes well, this is gonna be only my first mushrooms that I'm ever gonna grow. So I'm eager to take my spore prints from those and work on those genetics a little bit and continue from there.
You don't need to do it from spore print. Just work with the mycelium. Spore printing is
right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. If you have your substrate already colonized and you have a mycelial sample, you use the agar plates and you basically isolate that to get rid of any contaminants because you can actually see it with your visual eyes,
Right.
So
let it grow out
quick reference on why I know this. So in Jamaica, they legalized mushrooms with the same bill they legalized cannabis. So you can legally grow, process whatever you want with psychedelic mushrooms in Jamaica. Even if you're a tourist, you can have up to 2 ounces of mushrooms on you. A lot of people don't know that. Anyways,
that's awesome.
I was there. I learned a couple of different cool tricks. Well,
2 ounces will last you half a year, by the way.
Well,
if not longer.
Depends who you are.
Unless you're trying to drive yourself crazy. Because I had a little mushroom binge for a while, allegedly, and I had gotten up to the point where my tolerance got so high that I did a pretty large dose, and I was actually on the way to an event, and me and my cousin broke down, and we stayed in a hotel. I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna make this interesting, and I didn't count out the dosage or anything like that, but it had to be probably 5 to 7 grams of mushrooms, and I ended up where I couldn't even control it. I was making bird sounds. It was insane. So, as far as doing a lot of mushrooms, I would advise against it.
Doing the funky chicken.
It's not something you want to do all the time. I would say maybe once a month at the most.
Nice.
Steve Martin used to have a slogan for that. You went too far, too fast, too soon.
And you went alone. You didn't bring me.
What you can do, especially if
you got really small.
What you can do, especially if they're newer, is take them, grind them all up, and do a pretty fine, not a powder, but a pretty good, pretty small particle size, and then steep them in alcohol. And what will happen is if you do that for 24 to 48 hours and you evaporate that off, say with a vacuum chamber or something like that, you can actually separate the active ingredients you're after from the material.
Stuff that makes you fart.
Yes.
Yeah,
the alcohol will separate the mycotoxins so that you end up with just the part that you're after, and then you can take that and put it into your frosting, or I don't know, whatever it is that you intend to put that into. Again, not, if you're in Jamaica, you could do this. I wouldn't recommend it outside of there. It's probably the only place it's legal I can think of at the moment.
No farting.
Amsterdam's the other place. You can do it in the Netherlands. So if you live in those two places and you're visiting, you could do this. But yes, do that, and then you could take that and put it in. Allegedly, I used to know someone that would make galaxy brownies, where they take the mushroom concentrate, mix it in with some frosting, put it on a pot brownie, and give you the best edible experience you've ever had. I may or may not know that
3 days,
right? Yeah. So just to give people, since we ended up
I think something that a lot of people don't know about that is that it's actually water soluble, the active ingredient. So you can actually boil a little bit of water to extract it. But I have seen the method where you can use Everclear, or if you have access to 200 proof alcohol. Tommy, don't jump down my throat for using Everclear, please. But
no, what you're talking about is fine.
If you have something like that, you can pull the active ingredients with just water, but ethanol would absolutely make the evaporation process faster, and you can do it at a lower temperature. Off the top of the head, I don't know if anybody knows what
only pull the active ingredient.
Right.
Yeah, hold on. Let Tommy explain this because I want to make sure this is clarified. Go ahead, Tommy.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just going out to smoke the ciggy. But I was just saying the water works great. You can make that's why mushroom teas, everybody loves them. It's even why you can get a little of it mixed with if you have some shitty honey. But for separating out the stuff
Right.
that
The blue honey method. I've seen that one.
yeah, but for separating out the stuff that makes you fart and gives you the stomach quidge, you know, like if you eat too much mushrooms, you get that little quidgy feeling in your stomach. The ethanol gets the stuff that gets you zippy the monkey separated from the stuff that makes you fart and separated from the stuff that gives you quidge. And
I've never had a problem with that, but I can imagine that some people do because the taste alone is unbearable for some people. Again, I've never had a problem with the taste or anything, but
Some people have a hard time with the mycotoxins. It's an individual chemistry thing. You also see this issue with like some people on cancer. A lot of people don't know this.
well, okay. Well, I mean, as a general rule of thumb, that's why any kind of mushroom that you get, you're supposed to cook it first before you eat it. As a general rule of thumb, even if it's an edible mushroom, whatever it is. I mean, that's not always the case. You know, people don't always do what's best for them.
I agree with you too. Yeah, you should boil it at least.
You're 100% right. As someone who's an active mycologist and picks, I probably have 120 edible mushrooms in my head that I know between Pennsylvania, Colorado, and California, and none of them, not a single one, are you supposed to eat raw. Every single one you're supposed to cook. Why? Because there's mycotoxins in it, and if you heat it, you denature the mycotoxins.
Right on.
But anyways, it was cool to talk about a different topic. Probably one I spoke too much for, but just wanted to drop some knowledge since I do have some knowledge on mycology. I did a lot of mycological breeding. I was probably bred over 70 species of mushrooms and cultivated them along with this project I was lucky enough to be part of. Let me speak on that because I don't know if I ever spoke about that on the show, and I just spoke about it at that conference I was at. I had a chance to look at Turtle Island Farms, and one of the cool projects we worked on was what size mushroom production facility do I need to supplement all the CO2 for a commercial size cannabis grow? No one's ever figured that out. No one's ever done the math. We did. And that's one of the things that we're hoping to bring online with Purity is having all of our CO2 production be sustainable, either in phase 1 or phase 2, where we have mushroom production for our CO2. And that's one of the things where we're trying to be fully sustainable as a company and trying to find ways to profit off of things that were expenditures. And mushrooms is going to be a great way to supplement your CO2 and still make a profit. You can sell to all your local restaurants growing oysters or shiitakes or lion's manes and supply, or portobellos even, and supply the CO2 for free that you would normally need for your plants.
And fish.
No, not for fish. Fish.
No, I said and fish. And fish.
Oh yeah, you can also feed the mushrooms to your fish.
No, I meant supply. You said mushrooms to the restaurant.
You guys have to start growing those frogs with your aquaponic system that you lick them every once in a while.
Frogs that you lick.
I know what you're talking about.
In order to get
the frogs that secrete the psychedelic. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know what you're talking about, Tom.
Get that going in your aquaponic system, you know.
So have you guys ever read there's a really great book. I forget what it's called about the origins of the Sonoran Desert Toad. In fact, if you guys are ever interested, there's a incredible documentary. I believe it was by Ira Glass. I could be wrong. It was by one of the guys that works for NPR, and someone asked them, "Hey, what's the origin of the Sonoran Desert Toad?" People smoking the toad venom, and there was some random guy in the '60s that was chasing DMT. He did a quick chemical analysis on this toad venom, realized there was DMT in it, decided to concentrate it and smoke it with no idea as to whether or not he would survive. Sure enough, he had one of the most powerful trips in the history of the planet and discovered one of the best ways to produce DMT in an easily available form is from a desert toad. So now you actually have whole groups of people that go across the Sonoran Desert, collect the toads, take their excrement, their excretions, collect them, and then re-release those toads back to where they found them as a sustainable way to cultivate that and then provide it for people that need, certain spiritual healing and things. So it is something that it's great that they're not going out and raping the nature and totally, removing them, but it is something that does have to be addressed very quickly before it, they have lost a lot of numbers because of people poaching them. And I used to be heavily involved in the reptile trade, and I remember seeing Sonoran desert toads on our ordering list and just kind of giggling about it because we all knew what they were for.
And if you lick enough frogs, eventually one of them turns into a prince.
Oh my God.
So which ones turn into a princess? Is that toads, or do we gotta?
It depends how you lick them.
Is there a different creature that turns into women? I mean,
Yeah,
we
you
all
just
know
have
the
to
frogs turn
lick them
into men,
different.
but
You lick them
is
differently.
is there an animal that turns into like the other genders that everyone likes to talk about? Does each animal have like its own gender that it turns into when you kiss it? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Huh.
Anyway,
So what would a
I'm not making fun of
unicorn
anyone
turn into? Yeah.
by that statement, by the way.
Shit.
Bunch of
By the way,
degenerate growers.
Go Eagles, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah! I
diehard
told you I was
Philadelphia
man. They were. Hey, you know what? That was the fastest Super Bowl I ever saw, and the Eagles did. They just whooped their butt and kept going, and that was great. That was great. Remember when you said, "Oh yeah, but now we got our backup," and I said, "Yeah, that guy does nothing but win."
Oh yeah, Foley's a beast. But I don't.
And I had that on a podcast. Nick Foles won the damn Super Bowl for Philly. Damn right. Cool. Backup quarterback, nobody wants.
So Brain Grow, you were doing a lot of work with rosin and doing some documentation. Have you want to update us on that a little bit? Because I remember you were.
Oh yeah.
Well, I haven't actually done any of the same experiments I was talking about with the leaves in the past week, so can't really talk on much about that. Like I said, I pressed out a little bit of the material that I was growing, pulled out a little bit early. Came out super clear from the rosin press, and I actually posted it to ILGM before the podcast today. So if you want to check that out, what I pressed out earlier on today from the Ninja Fruit, check it out. It's beautiful, tastes amazing. But I don't know.
There's some of your Instagram posts on here sometime. Just like.
Well, I sometimes want to share them to the Facebook group, but yeah, I don't know. If I had a laptop or something like that, I would totally be happy to share some of the pictures I take. But
because I heard you
all I'm working on is a little fucking smartphone. Yeah.
Well, we need to try and that's something else I want to try and work on is trying to get us a centralized hub for all of us, and that's something I want to work together with Roger on. And Roger's already has a forum up for us and stuff. I think maybe we need to try to adopt that, but it's something we need to kind of work together on. But that's a different discussion for a different time.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely need to. We put together a network where we can have information we can just draw upon. Yeah.
Boom.
Nice.
That'll be awesome.
I love this crew.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to that, man. Yeah,
you're a good hub there, Roger. We appreciate the work you do.
EC, you want to update us on your grow? It's been a while since we've heard from you.
Yeah, just finished up smoking and curing out some of the stuff that I bred in the aquaponic system, and the vigor that you have from seeds that you produce like in your own system, then grow them out in that system is quite amazing, especially probably because they're from Cali or North America, not really from the Northeast. So now that they've been like climatized in a sense, the vigor is quite outstanding in the aquaponic system. Just line working it right now. The Tray Star Dog 2.0 had a little like instability in it. It only seems to pop up on the males once in a while, which is funny. It doesn't pop up in the females, but it's pretty much worked out. It's the females from just the Tray Star Dog were really nice, but yeah, just working on kind of finalizing that line. And then the deep water culture experiment's working pretty well, kind of working a little slowly on it, but the buckets. It's pretty much just like a 5-gallon bucket inside another 5-gallon bucket, and I raised up the other buckets by putting taking another 5-gallon bucket and then just like cutting a hole in it just to raise the other buckets up, and they don't wick up water, so you have a nice like 5-gallon living soil and your aquatic layer below. And they ended up flipping the flower a little earlier than I wanted, and did like one crop with just a couple fish in it, and mainly had the soil layer pulling its weight, and came out really nice. So I'm gonna get more K1 media and that's colonized, and add more fish, and perhaps expand the system because it is a bigger room. And yeah, that's pretty much it right now. Just enjoying the fruits of that labor, and got some other seeds that I'm testing out as soon as I can get more room opened up here. So I did join Rock Forum. I just haven't posted anything yet, so I have to get that done.
Awesome.
Are you looking into, is there any, you said the way you cut your buckets and all, and you said they flowered a little early. Do you feel like maybe, what I'm thinking about, having done a lot of deep water culture, do you feel perhaps that because of the bigger bucket, somehow that root zone got warm and wasn't really cool enough?
It was a timer failure, though. It was just a small light that kept the
okay.
flower. So once that went, it just went into flower. But I was running out of meds anyway, so it's like, screw it, works for me. I was still colonizing it. The material I had in the biofilter still, I would take like old buildup from my flood and drain system, put it into the biofilter and stuff like that to help kickstart it in a sense. But yeah, once it went to flower, I was kind of like, oh, screw it. Like, it might as well. I had a big soil layer with already living soil I know could hold its own in a sense. So I had that pretty much pull its weight, and just worked on colonizing the new biofilter and the new system. I took some grow stones out of my old system, threw them in the biofilter, but they ended up breaking apart and pretty much becoming like the size of like clay pebbles, all rounded, smooth. It was kind of a trip, but yeah, I was actually surprised to see some worms even living inside the biofilter, and I thought they would have been shredded up in there, but no, they were still on the bottom. And one thing I'd recommend if you do it, put air stones in each individual DWC bucket, because
what kind of biofilter are you using?
It's just an old DIY hydro system I had for vegging that I converted to an aquaponic system. They're just 2 30-gallon like Rubbermaid Brute trash cans. One's that's like a fish tank, and then the other one set up as like a swirl filter, and uses like K1 aquaponic media with 2 big air stones to bubble it up, just so it should be hopefully self-cleaning and all that fun stuff. But it does have a tap if I need to drain the biofilter or use it on soil or anything like that. But
yeah, that's what I do with my swirl filter. I empty that out and water my soil plants with that before I dual root zone them.
Yeah, that's my hope. I do still like doing soil too, and then I do like the decoupled aquaponics or the SIPS containers. I don't know if people still count that as aquaponics without the fish being in there. Yeah,
if you do, I guess you could say I'm doing the same thing. So I'm babysitting some plants for my buddy right now, and I'm basically doing the same thing with them, using the water from the solids filter to water those guys. They're doing pretty awesome too.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of like buildup that I have from like my bigger system, especially like the tube that goes up to supply the water to the bed. I'll clean that out once in a while and be filled with like heavy solids, and yeah, works great for brewing teas. And I'll just give to my friends like, here, don't buy a bottle, try this, and tell me how it works, and usually they love it. So
it's awesome.
Great. What have you been up to, Roger?
Could hardly hear you there, Steve. And I can't hear Roger.
What are you up to, Roger?
Oh, I just got through. I had a steamer full of vegetables just finished, and I was seasoning them when you asked me to talk. So I'm back though. What am I up to? Well, I just got I got everything I need I just got everything I need to do my first coconut oil project. And I'm going to take the trim and whatever falls off of my fruity pack, which is going to be comprised of strawberry kush, pineapple haze, blueberry, and blue dream, and pack a pint jar, full of it, and decarboxylate it. And then with my new sous vide that clips onto my my pot. And I'm looking forward to doing that and after I decarboxylate it, I'm gonna fill it up with my new I got a jar of organic coconut oil, and I'm gonna fill it up and I'm gonna cook it at 118 to 120 degrees for 5 days in my pot filled with water in my sous vide. And then I'm going to continue the process from there until it's finished after another 3 or 4 days. And to make a long story short, then I'm going to add my lecithin, and supercharge it. So I can't wait. I got everything right here. I showed people before. Let me see. Yep, here's my oh, wait a minute. I better turn my camera on, I guess. Huh?
There you go. Just because you're blind, Roger, doesn't mean the rest of us are.
That I bought. This was bought. This is a caloric or something like that. Caloric. And you actually can buy this. We looked all around. Believe it or not, I don't know. Well, I better get paid for this. But we bought this. This is sold at QVC. It's like $100, and you can cook food, like really good quality food with this too. It's just we got to research this. But as far as doing the coconut oil, we found that this is the thing. Instead of trying to bake it, and using up an oven for 5 days and then 3 days later, on the second stage, you use one of these. You got a pot of water. You keep it at that temperature. This is Tommy, got us all excited about this a few months ago. And this is about the 10th Christmas present I bought to further my cannabis career, and learn more stuff. But that's what I do with the money I make. I buy stuff so I can test everybody's ideas and theories and what they claim is a great thing now. But I already know that the coconut infused oil, cannabis, oil, that's some bad shit. Topically, it's edible. You can rub it on pain. It's like Bengay without the heat and the stink.
Yep.
If I could jump in there one quick sec on that piece of equipment that Roger was sharing with us. Roger actually turned me on to that. I had built my own sous vide stuff for the same price that I built my own sous vide stuff. You can get that badass piece of equipment that Roger has there. And the reason you're going to spend the $100, just so you know, is it's going to let you keep your product that you spent a lot of money for, or you spent a lot of time, treasure, and talent growing. It's going to let you keep it at a specific temperature within like 1.5 degrees for days. And by being able to keep it at this lower temperature for days, you gently coax the molecules you want without destroying them out of that plant you spent a lot of money for, or you spent a lot of time growing, rather than some of the, let's call them rapey methods of getting quick and dirty shit out of the plant. And it's equipment Roger was showing you is going to make you take whatever you have, source material you bought or source material you grow, and that will enable you to capture beyond anything. And you could spend 10 times the money and not do any better. So for $100, it's like, if you need medicine, what Roger's onto, it's the way.
Yeah.
And actually, Hogmaster really was the first one that bought this and found this particular tool. And then we all talk about it all the time because we've been researching it. And I've been looking around, and thought about buying it, but I find I'm getting to where I've got some things I've got to look forward to towards spring, and I've got to stop spending money. But I wasn't going to be there with the and not be able to make the coconut oil, because I'm gonna tell you what, a friend of mine sent me a baby food jar of it, and all I do is stick my finger in it and lick my finger off a couple of times, and I get medicated, and it's not, I don't get wasted. I just, my body feels lubricated or something. I don't know what to say. It feels lubricated. It's kind of a thing.
It's the perfect description. Yeah, perfect description.
Yeah. So, but we found it out. What's good is it's what it does is, before we were talking about doing this in the oven, and people were going, "Oh my God, my wife's going to kill me," trying to, tie up the oven for 5 days cooking this stuff, and you couldn't get an oven down to 118 to 120 degrees, which is where Hogmaster started. Actually, Tommy explained his homemade sous vide. So what happened was then, Hogmaster went and looked around and said, well, they make these things you clip to a side of a big old pot, like you'd cook a spaghetti sauce for 30 people in, and basically it enables you to use whatever size jars you want, so you can fill up the water to how much you want, and then this tool you just plug it in and leave it alone.
What Hogmaster found for us was most of those sous vide things I looked at were like $300, and I'm a cheap bastard, so I made my own, and Hogmaster found that badass one for $100, which there's no reason to do what I did, because what I'm doing is redneck compared to what
no reason anymore.
Yeah, he found the badass.
$100, you got something that'll just last. You get done with it, you wrap it up, you set it up you put it under the cabinet and put it in the cabinet until you're ready to make another batch. And this stuff just doesn't fly away. If you're doing it for yourself, you're doing $100 investment, and you already have a big giant sauce pot in your kitchen.
And in case you wonder, if you're out there and you're wondering, like, man, do I want to spend $100 on this? I'm going to tell you something else. There's a side trick that you can do with these sous vide things. You can make the baddest ass steaks that you've ever had, and I'm telling you this as somebody who went to the Culinary Institute of America. I'm a commissaire. I'm a garde manger. I was the youngest member ever in the International Chefs Association. I can cook some food Fat Boy can cook, okay? And from that background, this sous vide machine for $100, you will take a $5 steak and cook it in your sous vide, and I swear to God, it's going to be a $20, $25 steak when you're done. You will not believe it. So, yes, you'll use it on your medicine, and you'll use it for recreational, that kind of stuff, but on the weekends, when it's time to barbecue, you are going to have the baddest steaks on the entire block, all for the same $100.
You cook them in the sous vide, and then you throw them on the grill and caramelize them on there.
Actually, the way I do them, I cook them in the sous vide, and you can go look out on the internet. In fact, there's a channel. I love these Cuban guys called Sous Vide Everything. But they have a really great channel on sous vide cooking. But
what are they called, Tommy?
Sous Vide Everything. SOUSVIDE everything. And some Cuban guys, and they have a really popular channel. They're just hilarious, and they do a lot of experiments. You guys will all love them because they do side by side constantly, and they help you learn how to think. But yeah, you can take your sous vide machine, make the baddest ass steaks ever. You can set the thing on a timer so that when you come home, your steak is perfectly cooked. And even if it takes you 2 hours to get to your steak, it'll never overcook. And then when you're ready to eat it, you cut it out of the bag, you pat it dry with a paper towel, and you hit it with a blowtorch.
Oh, yeah. Well, that'll work. Yeah.
Char with a blowtorch. Shut up. Like I just had in Vegas, all I had was the steak at this one restaurant. The steak was $58 for one piece of prime rib steak. And it was fucking great. Prime. I mean, just brilliant. It was that Hard Rock Cafe casino thing or whatever. But it was only a smidge better than what I make in the sous vide and a blowtorch that I get at Ralph's.
Yeah, I was going to ask you though, do you really think I think I can cook a steak as good as anybody on the planet, same as you do, and same as any cook, so,
never
but I
had
do agree. But I know about some cooking techniques, like cooking in their own juices with wine and stuff like that too. And then you would
take your favorite cut of meat and do it in sous vide, and it'll change your religion. Now, you take a cheap cut of meat like a brisket or some chuck steak or a 7 blade or something like that, and you do it on sous vide, and you do it for like a day. What it winds up doing is, at the lower temperatures, you chemically break down some of the collagens and things like that in the plant. Excuse me, in the meat carcass, without cooking the meat itself. So you can wind up cooking away all the toughness, and I'm talking like as if you pressure cooked it, yet still it's a wonderful, delicious medium rare. So as if you didn't have enough good reason to buy that thing that Roger was showing you, I'm telling you, you're going to have good weed oil, and you're going to have good steak. Spend the money,
you cook a ton more stuff than just meat too. You can cook a ton of stuff in that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
No, it's never ending. It's basically just controlled temperature and water. Recirculating while it recirculates the water. It's it's pretty cool.
I had a quick announcement. Looks like our government shut down again. Which means there is currently no protections on, as of 36 minutes ago. The Rebecca Farr Act has now been suspended.
So does that mean they can't spy on us now either?
Does that mean I can't light this bowl?
No.
On the satellite tap?
It just means that
is it safe?
Can the federal protection. Well, for those of you who don't understand what the Rebecca Farr does, the Rebecca Farr Act prevents the federal government from spending any money on prosecuting medical or recreational cannabis growers that follow by state law. But it's directly tied to the budget bill. So if the budget expires, the government shuts down. So does that protection. And the nice thing is that if they reinstate or do an extension and it's part of it, it's retroactive. So, say for example, Jeff Sessions is going to stick up his ass because he's an old racist piece of shit, and decides that he wants to.
Political rant.
What do you really think, Steve?
And then goes after people. He actually cannot prosecute them should there be a reinstatement of a spending bill, because that revision would then become retroactive. So there is that protection, but they could absolutely pass a new spending bill that doesn't include that amendment, and then we're all effed. So everyone that's a cannabis supporter needs to pay close attention and go scream at your congressman. Call them up right now and tell them they cannot put, to remove cannabis protections. They're only hurting their own states by cutting off this tax revenue. So. And remember, that's how you get to these fat cats. Go them via their wallet. They don't listen to anything else. They're all corrupt assholes. You gotta go to them via their wallet. The only thing they listen to. So remember, they're cutting off their own tax dollars for their own constituents.
Just don't pull your cell phone out of your pocket so you get your ass shot dead when you're doing this crazy shit. Okay.
Well, you can record them. No, that's fine, but be careful.
Hey, and just in case you are out there and uppity, all right, and you're a stoner and you're not real smart like me, the way to get involved with your congressperson or your senator or anybody is something called Resist Bot. RESIST bot. And you can simply type the word resist, RESIST, to this number on your phone. It's a text number, 50, like 50 states in America, cleaning up the bullshit. What do you use to clean things up? 409. So want to clean up the 50 states, it's 50409. You text that to there, and it's a bot. It will send stuff back to you. It will identify where you are. It will find your congresspeople, your senators. Anytime you're on the toilet and you have a wild hair up your ass and you got something to say to the government, because when I'm taking a shit, I'm thinking about that shit. Just pull out your phone, okay, put the porn down, and you type resist to 50409, and you tell the thing Steve's telling you to tell your congresspeople, do it. It's free. And when you get involved with this, I've had them take things I've been sending to congresspeople and put them into letters to the editor and all kinds of things like that. And the price is insane. It's absolutely free. It doesn't matter whether you're right wing, left wing, or whatever. But when we talk about things on this show that say, hey, get involved, we want you to know it's not hard to do it. And if you don't do it, double shame on you. You can do it between bong loads. You just take your cell phone, resist, R-E-S-I-S-T, and you text it in your messaging program to 50409. And let them know what you think, because swear to God, this stuff really does count. And it's not a fax thing. It's not a form letter. This bot sends your exact wording, what you want to tell your representatives. So they actually read this shit. You can really make a difference, and all you have to do is text that while you're taking a shit. That's my soapbox. How to be involved in the political process. Because if we're going to be leaders, we got to do it.
Yep, and we were talking about earlier, we were talking about shitty legalization bills. That's how you make sure they go through. You call your congressman and say, hey, this provision is fucked up. Don't do that. Or, hey, we need to have home growing. Or, hey, there shouldn't be a 2-plant limit on home grows. Or, hey, you're an idiot because you think there should be 60% tax. Or, hey, this is a good idea. We need to work together. Whatever it is you want to do. But you got to know who it is you're going to communicate with. And we've talked about this so many times and how important it is, if you are involved in the cannabis industry, to be involved. Otherwise, what happened in Washington is going to happen to you. And we talked about that tonight. You don't want to be in that situation. Prevent it. You have the power.
And if you don't know who to talk to, you type resist to 50409 wherever you are in the country. They will connect you with who you need to talk to. All you need to be concerned about is what you want to say. They will help you, and they help you for free.
Yep, yep. Right,
get uppity, everybody.
Let's see. Did we do everybody? What everyone's up to? I guess I can do what I'm up to. So I've been working on a new grow. You guys have seen me start the moms. I'll have some more video content on that soon. I might even throw some videos up of our chickens that we're using for compost for some of our soil layer stuff. They're freaking awesome. We just got a bunch of raw, real giant, enormous chickens. They're freaking awesome. They're just babies though. And yeah, so just working on getting a new grow up, getting my grow built. May or may not have some build videos. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, we'll definitely have a lot more content coming the next few weeks at a couple of different levels. I started shooting a bunch of the nutrient stuff a while ago, and I just need to get that queued up. I'll be honest with you guys, I've been really sick since the last show. I've been pretty much bedridden, except for the last maybe 24 hours since the last show. So I haven't had a chance to do much of anything, even my own grow. I barely had enough time to keep the girls from dying on me. I actually missed transplanting them by a few days because I was just too sick to even do anything. So they were a little bit stretched when I transplanted them, but they'll be just fine. But aside from that, everything's coming together. We'll have some cool stuff coming up. I do want to mention in the description as well, the Dennis Perot Memorial Fund is going on right now. They're trying to raise $50,000 for Dennis's memorial fund and funeral. If you are all involved in the cannabis industry, you owe this man. He's the reason why there's medical cannabis. He's
in America.
There's recreational cannabis.
In America.
Fuck that. In the world, there was no recreational cannabis anywhere on the planet before Dennis's 215 bill. Like, fuck the U.S.
That's true.
The entire planet owes Dennis
for
medical marijuana. There was no other medical bill in any other country before Dennis's. Without him, there would be no AIDS research regarding cannabis. There would be no cancer research without cannabis. There would be no seizure research for all these children. There would be no Charlotte's Web. There would be none of the bullshit that all of you guys are talking about now. We wouldn't have this show right now. Mr. Green Jeans wouldn't have his legal protections that he's had for all the work he's done and over the years. And all of us wouldn't have had all the legal protections we have now for our cannabis businesses. You know, we'd all be in federal prison if we were open about what we're doing.
Well, perhaps somebody else would have pulled it off, but he took the reins originally.
He's the guy,
and he got it done.
Yeah, he's the
That's
one
what the bottom line is.
He's our background.
But
he's our
and it's awesome that they're having a big thing for him. What is that going to support?
His foundation.
What's going to support?
He has this huge foundation, dude. The work continues.
Yep. So this is all going towards his memorial fund and his funeral and stuff. They're selling calendars to try and support it. If you donate $30 to his GoFundMe, again, if you have an extra eighth, money for an extra eighth, even an extra gram, even an extra $1 or $5, like, just help him out. He's the reason why we can all do what we do. So.
And he did it all with a smile. He did it with love for all of us.
Where is that again? I was disconnected.
Sure, it's a link.
One more time for me.
If you're listening to the show, please take the time and donate to Dennis's Memorial Fund if you have any extra money at all. It will mean a lot and really help them, put him to rest and give him the proper send off that, he deserves as a hero.
Do they allow you to use PayPal?
Yes, you can. There's a whole bunch of ways you can add money on there, and
well, that's excellent. People will pay more. There'll be more raised if they allow PayPal.
Oh. So without him, none of this market exists. So, please,
we couldn't argue like we do if he didn't open the table for discussion.
Oh. Just wanted to mention that before we wrapped up the show. Also, I'm teaching the Aquaponic Cannabis class this weekend. Sorry about the coughing. I'm still getting over a little bit of bronchitis. At least I think that's what it is. Yeah, so we have the Aquaponic Cannabis class this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. If you're anywhere near San Francisco, pop in and check that out. And I think that's it. Does anyone else have anything else? We can switch just the after hours now.
I think I'm all talked out.
Yeah, I think we're good. I know it's pretty good, nice show tonight. A lot of good information from several artists. Tad was great tonight. That was a refreshing thing.
Yep.
I like that the guy just runs experiments. I'm like, dude, you're my people.
Yeah, see, that's what I've done my whole career is run experiments too. So I can, maybe not to his level, but still the fact that always running experiments, testing out different ways and doing different things so that when somebody asks you if this works or not. And that's the bottom line. I love that about it. Yeah, just somebody, what do you do for a living? I test shit. I mean, I'm
going to go to his channel and check out that mammoth pea experiment he did.
Yep. Yeah. I loved when he said, there's actually shit living in that stuff. I said, okay, well, that's what Colin wanted to hear too. Somebody tested that and went, there's some shit living in there. Well, that's what Colin claims. There's shit living in there, man. That's good. Well, that was a good argument against the powder too. Did I get too loud? Too loud?
No, everything's good.
No, you're good. Alrighty. Well, I think we'll wrap this up and then we'll relaunch an after hours show if anyone wants to stick around. I just want to kill this off so I can get a nice clean cut for the audio and we'll have a new show after hours pop up here in a couple of minutes. All right, guys? Thanks for joining us. And if you want to keep watching.
Thanks everybody for coming and hanging with us. We saw a bunch of you were here. Hope to see you.
And thanks again to everybody that takes the time to tune in live.
Thanks for everybody from I Love Growing Marijuana that's been commenting on the forum about the podcast. We really appreciate your support.
Had great questions and everything.
Hell yeah. Thanks for all of our viewers. Corey, R, Indica, Zach. I'm just gonna list first names so no one feels overly exposed here. Bob. Who else we got on here? Joey, Silver Arm, Brian.
Silver Arm, my buddy.
Yeah, he's been on the show in a little while. Thanks for everyone for watching. We had one of our best viewed episodes yet, and we'll be back in a bit, in a couple minutes. Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
Ciao.